As a mangaka at Type Moon Chapter 281 to 310, 281, Fierce Battle. It seems like the temple curse doesn't affect you much. Ozymandias spoke to Martha. So, is this another privilege of a ruler? Ozymandias. Martha looked around warily. I see, no wonder they say rulers are the strongest in a normal Holy Grail war. Indeed, someone like you, with the ruler class, performs completely differently from other classes, however. Ozymandias chuckled, that's for ordinary people. Such common sense doesn't apply in front of me. Sphinx. Martha clenched her fist, facing the lone sphinx that appeared around her. Alright, come, let me see your power, but I have things to attend to. She walked past the 7 sphinxes in front of her, saying, if you want to attack me, be prepared. Let me show you the consequences of attacking a ruler. Haha, come, let me witness it, witness what you can do. Squeak, squezik, squeak. At that moment, countless bats rushed into the confrontation, filling the space. Boom. After the explosion, the already ruined small island had turned into complete rubble, it even sank further down. It was already noticeable. After this Holy Grail war, this small island would be completely erased from the map. Haha, Enkidu, truly deserving, Gilgamesh laughed, it seems your abilities haven't declined at all. No, it's already at its limit. Enkidu smiled, although not as strong as in the Age of Gods. Your noble phantasm is indeed stronger than mine. Enough. Even if it's under the condition of having fame bonus, if your noble phantasm is still stronger than mine, it's equivalent to saying that I'm inferior to you. How could such a thing happen? Be careful behind you, Enkidu. Gilgamesh said, and his noble phantasm was directed towards Enkidu's back. However, it was already too late. Click, die. Alucard, at some point, had appeared behind Enkidu, interrupting their conversation, and he pulled the trigger, firing bullets toward the back of Enkidu's head. Enkidu's body stiffened slightly, and he dodged the shot in front of him, but a bloodstain still appeared on his face. The next moment, Alucard was pierced by Gilgamesh's noble phantasm. Bang, bang, bang. However, it was just being pierced. It was just like that. How could it possibly cause damage to Alucard? How could it be useful to him? Bullets were shot at Enkidu. Several bloodstains appeared on his white robe. It was inevitable. Generally, Enkidu could block these attacks easily, however, now. To match the power of Gilgamesh's noble phantasm, Enkidu had excessively used his abilities beyond his performance, causing considerable damage to himself. For a while, his movements became stiff, however, Alucard didn't care about that. Now was the opportunity. Now was the time to pull the trigger. So, he would kill him. No matter how powerful the noble phantasm was, it was just that. Killing him was as simple as that. Gilgamesh must be killed. His noble phantasm had too wide a range, too much danger. If he released his noble phantasm, Gilgamesh could kill him in an instant. So kill him before releasing the noble phantasm. Kill Gilgamesh. Although Alucard was preparing to unleash his noble phantasm, although he was preparing to unleash his river of death, it didn't mean he would directly charge into the blade. Let himself actively seek death? Impossible, out of the question? Moreover, he would not hold back at all. Want to kill him? Sure, come on, rely on your perseverance, rely on your courage, penetrate through that infinite army, and come to him. Truly defeat him, only such a person had the qualifications. Not some king in the sky. You damn bastard, boom, 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 boom. Countless noble phantasms were shot at Alucard, but it was useless. What's the use of such slow attacks? Alucard grinned, leaping high into the air, continuously pulling the trigger. Bullets shot out one by one. In the sky, bats filled the surroundings, biting towards Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Damn it, damn it, damn it, Gilgamesh's expression became a bit ugly. Although he blocked the bullets and bats, and the noble phantasms kept shooting, it was ineffective. Even attacks with significant suppressive effects? Weapons specially designed for killing undead? He had tried them all, but, in fact, except for weapons that could prevent wounds from healing, which could slightly delay Alucard's movements, others were utterly useless. Immortality. Truck immortality. Do you have to kill him hundreds of thousands of times? To open his noble phantasm gate of Babylon required very little magical energy consumption, to the point where it could be said to be very low. However, even if it was him, he couldn't withstand the consumption of such magical energy if he had to open it continuously hundreds of thousands of times. Splat! Finally, one bat broke through Gilgamesh's defense, biting his arm and leaving a small wound. Very small, blood only flowed a little before stopping. However, damn it! Swish! Chains entangled Alucard. The next moment, he turned into countless bats, broke free, and charged at Gilgamesh's airspace, saying, "Die!" Boom! Boom! Pulling the triggers of two guns at the same time, two bullets shot towards the unprotected back of Gilgamesh's head. Almost at the same time, around Alucard, several circles appeared. Countless noble phantasms were shot towards him. Numerous lightning bolts covered him. However, Alucard had no intention of avoiding them. He just kept pulling the trigger. Undying, he didn't need to worry about his injuries. Anyway, these things couldn't kill him. Boom! Gil! Watching Gilgamesh fall to the ground, Enkidu rushed over. The wound on his chest wasn't significant, and it would heal quickly. However, the situation on Gilgamesh's side was not very good. Although he was only slightly injured in reality, Gilgamesh's forehead had a bit of blood when he raised his head at that moment. However, that was all, just a small wound on the scalp. However, watching Alucard, who had completely recovered from a distance, the two were speechless for a moment. At this rate, if they didn't find a good solution, Gilgamesh would be dragged to death by Alucard. Splat! At that moment, a black key pierced through Alucard's head. 282. Testing the waters. Oh, Holy Church? Alucard turned his head back, recovering his detached head, and smiled at the group of dozens dressed as priests. What? Do you also want to join the Mages Association and send all the magus here to their deaths? Absolutely not, Ambrose Conant, the leader, said sternly, as long as we can kill you here. He then turned to Gilgamesh, King of Heroes. The Holy Grail is yours. This vampire is ours. Iscariot. Haha. Well, though it's hard to admit, this king, indeed can't do much against that monster. Gilgamesh laughed and said, "Fine, he's yours. I still have other matters to attend to." "Yes, then, please go ahead, King of Heroes," Ambrose Conant said, looking at Alucard. "Don't forget our names. This might be fate." Haha. Alucard laughed. "Indeed, maybe it is. But you guys are too weak, much weaker than the one I've encountered before. How could a group of like you touch my heart?" Ambrose Conant furrowed his brows slightly. Something was off. They should be the stronger ones. In the manga, the Iscariot, they only needed a few people on their side to wipe them out. Yet, Alucard claimed they were weaker? Take a look behind you. Iscariot like these? How could they possibly reach me? Ambrose Conant turned back slightly and froze the next moment. Originally Screus, prepared to dick, the expressions of the applicant stiffened. "You guys." Haha. Sorry about that. Hansa, who was about to escape, said apologetically, "Well, isn't dying so valiantly a bit too much? Yes. We just need to delay him a bit. Can't delay so many people, right? Come back to me." Ambrose Conant also understood Alucard's intention. Without firm conviction, no matter how strong, it was futile. How could these guys touch that vampire? But this was an unavoidable situation. These guys were originally unfaithful to the teachings, and many of them had no belief in the main church at all. Precisely because of this, he agreed to Hans's suggestion, naming the organization Iscariot. But what happened? When it came to the critical moment, the one who proposed it ran away. "Where is your faith?" "Well." Hansa scratched his head. "Fighting monsters is not a big deal, been there, done that. But a monster that can't be killed like this, let's forget it." Ha ha ha. Ha. Alucard laughed heartily. "After all, you guys are just a bunch of pigs, fantasizing that you've become humans? Want to run? To escape? Not fighting anymore? Recognized your identity? Have you? You're just prey. Want to escape? Did you ask the monster? Did you ask if the monster has had its fill tonight?" Shadows appeared around, and figures crawled out from the blood-red shadows, surrounding the Holy Church members. "Unfortunately, the monster is still hungry tonight, hasn't had a proper meal. So, stay here, all of you." Alucard narrowed his eyes and said, "None of you will escape. All of you will end up in my belly." "What's that?" Seeing the figures emerging from the shadows, Ambrose Conant's face changed. Those surrounding them, each and every one of them was a magician. Clone. Squad. The magus of the Mages Association had become Alucard's army that covered all around. A member of the River of Death. So, what should we do? Alucard held the head of a holy church representative he had grabbed at some point, squeezing it in his hand, blood splattering out. With a crazed smile on his face, he said, facing such a monster, "What can you guys do? Turn your backs and run, or charge straight at me." "Charge!" Ambrose Conant roared, seeing the current situation. "You should understand." "Well, forget it, do as you please, but remember, we are believers in the God. We are against the traitors." Should we recite lines?" Hansa said somewhat awkwardly. "Get lost." Boom! At that moment, Ambrose Conant said nothing more and charged directly at Alucard. The powerful impact caused the ground to crack, but in front of him, one bounded field after another appeared. Walls, flames, ICC. His clothes were torn, revealing the mechanical body underneath. After the previous battle, the area of his body that had been mechanized increased further. Except for the brain, there were not many good parts left. 2 black keys popped out of the mechanical arm. He cut off the heads of the nearby magus, then roared and swung at Alucard. Boom, boom, boom! Bullets were fired. Pits were formed on his body. But he still charged forward towards Alucard. Well, can't be helped. Hansa sighed slightly. 2 black keys appeared in his hands. Dodging to the side, he shot the black keys. Boom! Almost at the same time, the magus who had crawled out of the ground started to move. The magus who emerged from the ground kicked Hansa flying. A thunderbolt from above hit Hansa precisely as he was kicked. This was the battle between the representatives and the magus under Alucard and the other side. On the other side, Gilgamesh once again activated his noble phantasm, the Gate of Babylon. "First, let's take down this pyramid. Wake up, EA." Gilgamesh said, raising his EA high, considering the force. Yes, he didn't plan to go all out. After all, Kire Kodamine's target was the Holy Grail. It would be interesting to let the leyline destroy something in advance, so if he really went all out, for him, he might end up destroying not only this pyramid but also the connection to the Holy Grail. So, first strike. Let's test its durability. Awaken, EA. 283. Obsession, Aura. Martha shattered a wall and swiftly rushed inside, where the air was filled with curses and poisonous substances. However, they had no effect on her. She possessed the ability to neutralize such things. The real challenge was the divine beasts, the Sphinxes. Undying just like that Alucard. These creatures called Sphinxes were all undying. They resurrected immediately after death, an endless cycle. Though Martha managed to kill one Sphinx 3 times, she eventually had to retreat. Dealing with one of them was already tough, now, there were 7. They were tough-skinned, requiring a heroic spirit like Saber to handle. Martha, with her bare fists, found it exhausting to defeat just one. Looking at the wall in front of her, Martha took a deep breath while running. Clenching her fist, she prepared herself. Then, Aura. Boom. The wall shattered before her iron fist. However, in Martha's eyes, the broken area quickly restored at an astonishing speed. Just 1 second was enough for a complete recovery. But that was sufficient. She was a servant, and 1 second was enough for her to charge through. However, she sensed that the wall didn't impede the Sphinxes, and immediately sprinted forward. Though those creatures weren't her match, being constantly chased was exhausting. If this continued, she would be worn down eventually. Boom! What's happening? Martha felt the ground shaking, not only the ground but also the ceiling. The indestructible temple even had bricks falling. Is someone attacking from outside? Haha. No way. This level of attack can damage my temple? It's too far-fetched. It's much weaker than the one in the desert. What? Are you out of strength? No way. Gilgamesh looked at the collapsed third of the temple, but in just a few seconds, it completely recovered. He laughed, ha ha ha. Everything is within the predictions of this king. He was concerned about the fragility of your temple, but it seems fine now, if that's the case. This king will double the force. Boom, oh no. Bartholomei Lorelei, who just arrived, watched the situation and his expression change. Enkidu. Arash. Stop him. Doubling the force? What was that situation? If that happened, maybe the Ozymandias' temple would be destroyed. Fool, do you think I will just watch you attack like this? Osmanthus yelled. Amen Raham? The shining light slowly dimmed. Ozymandias shifted his gaze to the interior of the pyramid. To the woman who appeared unexpectedly in front of him. The saint, Martha. Haha, not bad. You alone broke through my divine beasts and came to me. Before the throne of the pharaoh, well done. Ozymandias laughed. However, in reality, most of his attention was on Gilgamesh outside. Therefore, he just ordered the sphinxes to attack and didn't care about the defenses. If not for that, those sphinxes could have appeared directly anywhere inside the temple. It was too simple to just shake them off once. I'll say that, Martha sighed. So, you're the troublemaker, right? Releasing these sphinxes to chase me. I just came in to hide a bit. And also who allowed you to take the Holy Grail? I told you, right? You won't get your hands on it until the final winner is decided? Haha. So what? I am the pharaoh, and holding everything in my hands is only natural. Even if you are unwilling, what can you do? Ozymandias looked at Martha and laughed. Voices like yours are annoying, Martha said discontentedly, stepping forward towards Ozymandias. No, you're wrong. Is there any sound more delightful in this world than that of the pharaoh? None? Ozymandias stopped laughing and said with a different tone. Even if it's a joke, it's too much. Clatter, clatter, clatter. At the next moment, the hall shone brightly. Blue light. Martha's expression became serious as she stared around. Instantly, several light beams shot out, targeting Martha who stood in front of the pharaoh. Boom, boom, boom. I don't care about that. If you're unwilling to hand over the Holy Grail, then leave first. Black Rider from the Black faction has already left. It's time for you, the Red Rider from the Red faction, to leave. Oh, you mean, the Black Rider has left? Watching Martha continuously dodging and trying to approach, Ozymandias suddenly changed his tone completely. Are you saying me, Dio, has left? What? Martha's face slightly changed, and her footsteps stopped. Behind Ozymandias appeared that thing, Dio's stand, the world over heaven. It was directly hit by the incoming light beam. Boom. Boom. Roar. Please. Tarask. A dragon suddenly appeared in front of Martha, blocking the incoming light beam. Haha, is that the dragon tamed by the saint? Interesting? Martha looked at Ozymandias and frowned. Just now. Was it an illusion? Or? No, no way. What exactly happened just now? Are you Ozymandias? Or Dio? Is it necessary to ask such a simple question? Ozymandias frowned. I already said? I am the pharaoh. The king among kings. The supreme god king. Therefore, the authority of the underworld is naturally within my grasp. It's not a big deal to summon 1 or 2 dead souls, right? But, that Dio indeed exceeded my expectations. Even now, his consciousness hasn't completely dissipated. Haha, should I say it's a kind of obsession? Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. 284. The king exits. Ozymandias was well aware of one thing. That was, he hadn't completely gotten rid of Dio yet. Occasionally, he would pop up, just like he did a moment ago. However, most of the time, Ozymandias didn't care and found it inconsequential. As long as he was in this temple, he had absolute control. Boom! Just at that moment, another roar echoed from outside. The temple began to collapse amidst the rumbling, and it didn't stop until the top part above Ozymandias completely collapsed. Then, as if it were fragments of space-time, in just a few seconds, everything returned to normal. The previous collapse seemed like a simple illusion. Haha, I've said it before. Such attacks are nothing, completely inconsequential. Tarask. In the next moment, taking advantage of this moment, Martha and Tarask rushed to Ozymandias from both sides. It's over like this. Bang. What? Haha, I just said, such attacks are nothing. Ozymandias ignored the wound that pierced his chest, grabbed Martha's wrist, and said, it's over, disappear, ruler. Martha's expression changed. Indeed, was she disappearing? What is this? At this moment, Martha had only one thought in her mind. She hadn't finished reading her manga. It's a pity, she had to disappear at a time like this. Oh, isn't she entering the Holy Grail? Ozymandias looked at the disappearing Martha, and the wound on her chest instantly healed. Martha's blow had pierced his spiritual core, but it didn't destroy his immortality. What intrigued him more was that Martha didn't enter the Holy Grail but directly broke into the throne of heroes. So, this is the ruler class. Not bad. No matter what happens, I'm sure I can't be that. Ha ha ha, he continued, lifting his head and looking through the pyramid, seeing the Golden King outside. It's over like this, next is your turn, Gilgamesh. He ha ha ha. Wrong. It's over for you, Gilgamesh laughed. Did you not notice while being distracted by that saint's battle? It's now. Let me show you the true brilliance of EA. The charging was complete. A massive amount of magical energy filled EA. This would be the most powerful strike since Gilgamesh descended, slightly weaker than the one from the Age of Gods. Oh no, Ozymandias's face changed. Indeed, this attack could not be blocked by the current temple, but... Haha. You think the gigantic lightning ball from earlier was my noble phantasm? Ozymandias laughed, and golden light began to appear in the sky. On the ground, the pyramid started trembling and floated towards the sky bit by bit. This is my true noble phantasm, my ultimate move, take it. Gilgamesh's expression also became serious. The Grand Temple is not just one but two, right? Arash, who was preparing to launch his noble phantasm to help Ozymandias, was slightly stunned. Sky and earth. Two pyramids. And in the middle was that king of heroes, Gilgamesh. Humming, in the sky, one after another light circle appeared. Countless shields were thrown out all at once. Now, Gilgamesh's entire attention was on his noble phantasm, Enuma Elish. There was no spare energy to see what treasures he had thrown out, no spare energy to choose the right treasures to radiate their proper brilliance. This strike was already at full power. Even with numerous magus from the cathedral as magical energy supplies, it was already the limit. Some of those people might have died now due to the excessive withdrawal of magical energy. To recreate such a move again, relying solely on his magical energy wasn't enough. Not completely impossible, even surpassing the power of this strike, he could do it with his treasures, however. It was difficult to recreate such an opportunity. If this strike didn't go out now, who would distract Ozymandias's attention in the temple? At that time, the real victory would be unpredictable. All my attention is poured into this one strike. Gilgamesh shouted, "Rejoice, Ea! Before you is a formidable enemy. End his existence. Let this battle come to an end." Star of creation that split heaven and earth, Enuma Elish. Boon the sword of rupture roared like never before. A massive torrent swallowed the world and roared towards the temple that was charging. Facing this situation, even the King of Heroes couldn't hold back to check on the Holy Grail's condition. In other words, with one slight mistake, the Holy Grail might disappear under this attack. Let me see whether my noble phantasm is stronger or you'll die under the attack of my temple. Ramses II laughed. That's right. Victory has been destined long ago. The only one who can win is me. Activate. Ramesseum Tentiris. Boom! The temple collided with the torrent, piercing through the shields. This strike. Everyone had exerted all their efforts. There could only be one winner, there wouldn't be a second outcome. Both kings were extremely certain of one thing: the winner would be themselves. Breaking free from Gilgamesh's restraint, Enkidu, who was already covered in wounds, deeply breathed in. The wounds were slowly healing. As long as his core wasn't damaged, these injuries were negligible. But his current focus wasn't here. In the sky, a radiant light appeared. The dazzling light made countless people temporarily lose their vision, but Enkidu didn't. He stared into the light. He wanted to see the birth of the victor. 285. The arrival of the end, the Holy Grail drawn by the collision in the sky. Alucard turned his head. Directly below the Grand Temple. The Holy Grail was there, seemingly intentionally left by Ryder. However, Alucard wasn't the only one rushing towards the Holy Grail. There was another servant who noticed the Great Holy Grail. The Lancer from the Red faction, Enkidu. This is something I can't let you take so easily, Enkidu said as countless chains shot out from him towards Alucard. Ha! Alucard laughed, and the places on his body hit by the chains all turned into blood, transforming into countless bats flying forward. Chase, chase, the Holy Grail can only be mine, and it can only be me. Fate, this is destiny. Same here. Enkidu smiled, it's also my master's destiny. I have to take action. Chains versus bullets. Oddly, there was no sound. It was straightforward. In the background, the sound above their heads had already far surpassed the collision of bullets and chains, exceeding the sound of the two talking. In the sky, a torrent, seemingly capable of destroying the world, raged. Countless rocks fell and slowly shattered, but in the peculiar silence formed by the massive roar, two sounds were extremely piercing. Snap, snap, the sound of hands touching the Holy Grail. Almost simultaneously, two pairs of hands touched the Holy Grail. Oddly enough. Laughter. Chirp. Enkidu's arms were like a sword. No, it was a sword. It pierced through Alucard's heart, and in the next moment, hands continuously waved, turning Alucard quickly into a puddle of blood. But missed Rosk. The blood turned into mist, formed behind Enkidu, and suddenly grabbed Enkidu's head, slamming it to the ground. Splat. Almost at the same time, countless knives pierced Enkidu's body, stabbing through Alucard. Blood remained on the corners of his mouth. No, his whole body was covered in blood. But Alucard was smiling. There was no intention to let go at all, suddenly swinging forward. Enkidu was thrown into the wall formed by the bats. Then, two guns appeared in Alucard's hands, and countless bullets were shot like rain. Laughter echoed. However, the sound couldn't penetrate outside. The sound above was too loud, completely suppressing everything on this side. The beam gradually pierced through the temple. The main temple collapsed. The magnificent structure named Radiance, over 2,000 meters long, the eagerly awaited inherent barrier, in an instant vanished into thin air. So that's how it is. Ozymandias showed no surprise, no impatience. He just sat on the throne as a matter of course, welcoming the pillar of light that pierced the temple and arrived before him. Well, this time it ends here. But, Golden King, how will you fare after receiving my blow? With such a smile. Thoroughly killed by the sword of rupture, returning to the throne of heroes. At the same time Enkidu's chains pierced through Alucard, blades thrust through his limbs, and chains entangled him on the ground. Finally, the radiance of Ea penetrated the temple, it fell onto the earth. In the next moment, countless vines appeared around, gathering the Holy Grail in the center and protecting it there. Enuma Elish, as before, not for attack but solely for defense, this noble phantasm was used. Did it fail? That pharaoh. Enkidu raised his head, looking at the sky, and as the dust gradually settled, the world quieted down. His voice could finally be heard. Impressive, as expected of Gil. Enkidu smiled a little, even facing that pharaoh. Did we win as a matter of course? He understood that the pharaoh had underestimated the situation for a moment. If, at the same time as Gilgamesh's Ea descended, Ozymandias could launch the magical artillery called Dendera electric bulb, the outcome might have been different. That artillery would undoubtedly consume most of the power of Ea. Without that power, even a temple that could crush a part of the world wouldn't be able to completely destroy it as it did now. Not only that. Look around. You can siccarly hear the sound of flowing water. The water is flowing towards Enkidu Zamalek Island. This island, located at the center of Cairo, within the Nile River, completely disappeared. Only the place where Enkidu stood, using his noble phantasm to resist, preserved the land beneath his feet and the Holy Grail on the side. Huh? Where's Alucard? Enkidu's expression changed, and he quickly raised his head, looking through the dust. There was a presence rushing from behind Gilgamesh. Checkmate! Alucard appeared behind Gilgamesh, grinning. In the next moment, numerous thunderbolts struck him. Mongrel. Covered in blood, pale-faced Gilgamesh revealed a smile. You thought you could ambush me when I seemed weak. Don't be too arrogant. No, you're wrong. I did successfully ambush you. What? Gilgamesh's expression changed slightly. A charred arm pierced through his chest, crushing his spiritual core. What's wrong, King of Heroes? Can't move now. Just because your spiritual core is shattered, is that it? Gil. Listening to the voice below trying to say something, Gilgamesh, with a smile, stopped for a moment. No, forget it. Let's end it here. Huh? What do you mean? Let me make a prophecy here, Alucard. You will be killed by my dear friend. How about it? Is there any other ending besides this? Hey, ha ha ha, killed by him. Is it him? Is he a hero of humanity? Why bother saying it? Isn't the answer clear? Gilgamesh's body slowly began to etherealize. I've already seen it, you know, seen. That guy is coming. Having already endured Ozymandias's grand temple and being heavily injured, Gilgamesh exited at this moment. Alucard slowly descended to the last piece of ground, looking at Enkidu with a smile. What will you do? That Gilgamesh said you could kill me, right El? Well, that's right. Enkidu nodded. If he said so, then it's not wrong. I will, indeed, send you back. 286. River of Death. Yeah. Brought to the shore by Arash, Bartholomew Lorelei looked into the distance and said, Ryder actually lost? He lost, indeed. However, the situation doesn't look good for the King of Heroes either. Arash possessed an advanced clairvoyance. Though not the highest level, it was enough to perceive simple things in the distance. Through the dust, he clearly saw Gilgamesh floating in midair with his noble phantasm, shaking his head as if he were unconscious. Then in the next moment, behind him, a bloodlight appeared, and that blood light condensed into a humanoid figure. Struck by lightning, but even so, the arm still pierced through Gilgamesh's chest. They're coming over, Arash said to Bartholomew Lorelei. The island has disappeared, and those two are coming over. Enkidu and Alucard, right? Bartholomew Lorelei, looking into the distance, suddenly paused. Wait. If that's the case, what about the Holy Church? Almost all wiped out. Arash looked into the distance and said, some were killed by Alucard, and the others were affected by Gilgamesh's noble phantasm. Only a few managed to jump into the water and barely survived, but it seems they won't be able to contribute as fighting force anymore. I understand. Bartholomew Lorelei nodded. Then let's go Arash. Only Alucard remains. Take him down, along with Enkidu. Yes, I got it. Alucard has no weaknesses, but if you must insist, a couple of things can be mentioned. For example, he cannot traverse the sea. Under normal circumstances, he can fly in the air, but he cannot fly above the sea. However, this is not the sea here after all. Although it's just a river, the Nile River to be exact. Though it's wide, the original Alucard is not in the middle, and this distance. A simple leap would easily land him on the shore. Bartholomew Lorelei, observing the battle, let out a slight sigh. Walking towards the location of the Holy Grail on the last remaining piece of land in the center of the Nile River. Cairo and the surrounding areas have already been evacuated. Done by the Holy Church. It's unknown how much of the city will remain after this Holy Grail war. After all, it seems, Alucard and the others are about to begin their battle within this city. Do you want to continue this repetition? Enkidu looked at Alucard, who had rapidly recovered in front of him, and said, now that it's just the two of us left, do you want to continue this endless repetition? Yeah, Alucard sighed, although it's close, it doesn't matter anymore. It's about time. Alucard chuckled slightly, I really have to thank the people from the Holy Church. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome to rush into the desert now, it can be used directly. Enkidu became alert. Arash drew his bow. Neither of them attacked. After all, attacking would be futile. The bird of the Hermes is my name. In the distance. Kazuya stopped his action and looked to the side. There, Alucard's coffin was. White marks appeared on the black coffin lid, and then blood-colored patterns appeared around it. It's starting. Kazuya quickly shifted his attention, looking at that side, looking at Alucard. The distance to Alucard is not far from here. In a moment, Kazuya saw it. The person chanting there. That Alucard, it's coming, the river of death. I devoured my own wings. In an instant, everyone felt the chilling sensation. As if falling into a snake pit, the chilling sensation. The whole body seemed uncontrollably cold, and fear was felt. Kazuya was no exception. Even though he knew that it was his own servant, at this moment, his heart couldn't help but beat violently. However, neither Enkidu nor Arash said anything. There was no attack. No intention to interrupt Alucard's actions and thoughts, because they all knew that it was impossible. Alucard's move could not be interrupted. So, just be vigilant. Be vigilant for his noble phantasm to fully activate. Be vigilant for the moment the river of death appears. That's how I was tamed. No sound at all, but everyone knew it was coming. The river was coming, the river of death. In the words of the plump lieutenant colonel from the manga. Dance of death, let hell sing, ha. Kazuya looked down, and in his hand, there appeared paper and pen he didn't know when. Not far away, the coffin was slowly opened. Countless CYCS appeared inside. Alucard dispersed entirely, covered in countless blood lights. Enkidu placed his hand on the ground, borrowing it for a moment. In the next moment, the blood's radiance infinitely expanded, as if it was covering the sky, forming a river of blood that continuously appeared and surged towards Enkidu. Hiss, 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 hiss. In the next moment, numerous noble phantasms appeared in the earth. Swords pierced towards the river. Could the river be stopped by just one noble phantasm? No. Moreover, this was not an ordinary river. It was a river of death surging out from hell. Enkidu also had his own natural enemy. The curse of death. If you must say, this thing is his natural enemy. In this river of death, Enkidu smelled the scent of it. His body functions were reduced, and he suffered quite a few injuries just by standing there, but even so, I can't lose. Enkidu smiled and said, after all, didn't Gil say that I would win? He said you would win. So what? Boom. The river suddenly expanded several times, blocking the sky, heavily slamming towards Enkidu. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't a river at all but countless people. In the past, all living beings devoured by Alucard were in this river. In total, there were millions. 287, Undying Tyrant. So, this is the River of Death. Watching the surging river, which instantly engulfed Enkidu and covered the area where Arash was located, Bartholomew Lorelei felt nothing but fear. Even with strenuous efforts to suppress, she couldn't control the emergence of the emotion called tear, from deep within her heart. She even wondered, is it really okay like this? Is it really good to force out Alucard's noble phantasm like this? That thing. Can Enkidu and Arash really defeat it? Necrophobia. There are quite a few people with such symptoms. Millions of centipedes gathered densely together, millions of snakes gathered densely together. Bartholomew Lorelei was confident that even in such a situation, she could decisively act and eliminate every single one. However, millions of people gathered densely together. One entangled another, with blood-red pupils and arms reaching out, wailing. Not to mention fighting against them, just looking at it would make one feel the bone-chilling cold emanating from the depths of one's being. It was a huge challenge for the heart. The sanity value plummeted. This was Alucard's true noble phantasm, his true form. An ultimate monster that carried millions of lives on its shoulders. The river continued to cover. The dead still kept emerging, as if it were an endless stream. The river of death. After all, these were millions of people, not something that could be completely released in a short time. Hiss, 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 hiss. A dense rain of swords shot out from the ground, clearing a hole in the center of the dead river, as if all of them were avoiding that place. Continuing like this won't work. Enkidu gritted his teeth. With this, he couldn't move, and if he was dragged, he would be killed. In the next moment, he jumped out of this river of death, towards the depths, rushing towards where Alucard was. Slap. A human ladder rose high, a hand grabbing his jumping foot, attempting to pull him down. In front of him, a rushing army. Alucard's army, rushing towards this side. Where's Alucard? Chains and swords tore open a path, but with a casual breath, one could sense the bloody air permeating the atmosphere. Enkidu, with an A+ level in presence detection. This allowed him to perceive Alucard the moment Gilgamesh was summoned. However, Alucard should be nearby, even not far away, but he couldn't feel it. He couldn't completely detect his presence. Where is this undying tyrant? Arash was also searching. Moving around, leaping between buildings, avoiding the surging army of the River of Death, constantly searching. The next moment, his pupils slightly contracted. The ground beneath his feet trembled. The army of the River of Death. They toppled the buildings. In front, it looked like a red sea. In this sea, there were only Arash and Enkidu. This won't do. Arash turned around and began to retreat, heading towards the outside. Lancer, withdraw. I'm going to use my noble phantasm. Noble phantasm. Enkidu, looking from a distance, slightly turned his head. Huh, that noble phantasm. I understand. Saying that, he looked around and began to retreat. However, they both wanted to retreat, but the River of Death behind them wouldn't allow it. Countless sounds of horses running. Alucard's army surged again, each person holding a long spear, as if they wanted to pierce everyone, recreating the scene from that year. Bartholomew Lorelei looked at the scene in front of the Holy Grail. Castor and her master also walked over at some point. Glancing casually at the two, she didn't say anything. Oh right, what was the name of Castor's master? She forgot. The command spells on the back of her hand faintly emitted light, and Arash's master, a member of the clone squad, was naturally already dead. The command spells transferred to her hand. This was the initial arrangement. Next, get ready to unleash your noble phantasm, Archer. Be sure to burn all of Alucard's river of death dry without leaving anything behind. Got it. Arash just nodded and didn't say anything more. They were about to run away. Once they ran away, they could use the noble phantasm, one strike and everything. Is that? Arash smiled bitterly, surrounded, huh? Yes, surrounded. Alucard smiled, standing in front of Arash, and behind him was an army wearing armor and riding horses, countless soldiers. Royal cavalry of Wallachia. Blood-red flags fluttered in the wind. Is this really okay? Arash looked at Alucard, who raised his bow, and said, if you come out like this, I can kill you in an instant. Now, piercing through your heart should be enough to kill you, right? Ha ha ha. That's right, that's it now, as long as you pierce through my heart, you can kill me. But, can you do it? Can you use your bow to pierce through my heart? Saying that, Alucard's army behind him began to charge. Long spears were aimed at Arash. So, give it a try. Arash said, ignoring the approaching army, pulling out the bow in his hand. The crimson bow was fully drawn by Arash's full strength, and the arrow, like a full moon, accurately aimed at Alucard behind the army. Then, it was shot. Ding! A large sword appeared in Alucard's hand and accurately deflected the arrow. Just like this. Do you think you can still say you want to kill me? Saying that, Alucard suddenly turned around, and the sword in his hand swung towards Arash. I found you, Enkidu said, chains entwining around Alucard's sword, pulling the sword away, and his arm stabbed towards Alucard's heart. Bang! The next moment, accompanied by the gunshot, the red cloak once again appeared on Alucard's body, and in the black muzzle, a bullet accurately pierced through Enkidu's chest. Macedonian Special Silver Bullet Case, Mercury Baptized Bullet Head, Marvel's Special Powder, NNA 9, 39 cm in length, 16 kg 13 mm explosive piercing shell. The Jackal. After being summoned as a servant, the power increases once again. What will you do with this injury? Can you still fight? Of course, I can. Enkidu stood up, the wound had already stopped bleeding, and he smiled helplessly, I am a weapon. As long as it doesn't break, I can fight. Oh, is that so? Well, I was wrong. Only humans can defeat monsters. You came to me with the determination to defeat monsters, so what are you? A weapon, or a human? 288 Stella. Humanity. Me. Enkidu shook his head, no matter how you look at it, I am far from being human. Is that so? Since you insist on thinking that way, then perish. Enkidu, protect yourself. Just at that moment, a voice reached them. Arash, who had already run far away, had drawn his bow. What's this? Enkidu received the message, turned around, and ran, placing himself under the firepower of his allies. Not that there was no way to avoid it, he just felt there was no need to unnecessarily waste effort. Bartholomew Lorelei used all her spells. There was no need for anything that didn't stay behind. After using his noble phantasm, Arash was destined to exit the stage. Lancer and Castor still had their own masters, in other words, they didn't need her anymore, and the last wisher of the Holy Grail wasn't her either. That's how things were, so, let's just use everything. On the other side, Kazuya had also run. Although he could resurrect himself, Avalon granted him this immortality, as long as the magical energy inside didn't run out. No. Perhaps receiving such a stimulus would automatically unleash his noble phantasm to block what was in front of him. That would be bad. In that case, magical energy might be depleted in an instant. And, when Avalon repaired him before, it only fixed the damaged parts like the heart and brain. If he were to be attacked all over again, who knew how much magical energy would be consumed in one resurrection? Magical energy, although Kazuya could now barely refine it. But it was still not enough to use his noble phantasm that he possessed with the magical energy source within him. Summoning some particularly weak ones might, barely, be possible. He hadn't tested it, but, if that were the case, it might cause considerable damage to the eyes. After all, Kazuya's magical energy was all independently refined through his eyes. His magical energy control was limited. So, for now, let's run. Look in the distance. Arash, watching Enkidu run far away, took a deep breath and drew his crimson bow. O sacred Lord in heaven! Radiant Lord, merciful, who bestowed upon me wisdom and strength. In Arash's memory, this was the nth time he had spoken such words. When he shot this arrow, everything would come to an end. A truly final arrow, at the same time, what would also end, was his life. I call upon thee to witness my heart, my thoughts, and everything I've achieved. Now, it was time to use this power. Hell was in front of him. As if there were countless evil spirits, and now, the only one capable of ending all this was him. Now, creator of the moon and stars. Behold my deeds, my death, and my sponta armati which I must carry out. This arrow, the last time he shot it, marked the moment he became a hero, became a heroic spirit, the moment he died. This arrow engraved his name in history. Even the pharaoh, Ozymandias, grew up listening to his stories. The bow became fuller. All the strength in his body was poured into it. After I unleash this last arrow with all my strength, my iron body shall shatter and annihilate me where I stand. The last time, this arrow split the earth. The arrow shot from the summit of Mount Damavand along the east, reaching the distant Oxus River. Later, it was said that the earth divided by the arrow delineated the borders, maintaining peace for over 2,000 years. Splitting the earth, ending the conflict between two nations. An extraordinary technique that determined the boundaries for long-lasting peace. Now, in this place, the bowman who fully understood the power of Arash, synonymous with an archer in this land, once again drew his bow. Stella. The moment the arrow was shot, cracks appeared in the body of the servant. Those were injuries that couldn't be repaired. How long could he endure? 1 second, 2 seconds. In any case, he could no longer see the scenery formed by the arrow he shot. The moment he shot this arrow, he experienced his own demise. No unnecessary words. He directly returned to the throne of the heroic spirit. But the arrow still flew. With a power beyond human capabilities, it struck out. The target was not in the distance but right in front the river of death. In this land, Arash was not the only one strengthened by the local power. Ozymandias also received a significant boost. Even more than Ozymandias received. After all, Arash himself was synonymous with an archer in this land, and how many people here knew of Arash? Plus, several spells amplified his entire being. The light emitted by this strike was even the most powerful in this Holy Grail war. The arrow carried light and heat. Just for an instant, but it seemed like a meteor, once again shooting at the Karth. Boom. Enuma Elish. Enkidu unleashed his noble phantasm. The power was too strong. Even though he escaped from the designated attack range set by Arash, the mere shockwaves made him feel a fatal threat. He couldn't even fully release his noble phantasm. He could only do his best to block what was in front of him. Even though the target of the attack was Alucard, he also suffered immense injuries as a result. The skills of his body greatly decreased. His master had already started using spells to help him recover. But the injuries were too severe. Without the spells, although he wouldn't die, he would lose his ability to move. The same was true for Kazuya. Avalon was stimulated, just as he thought, even without chanting the true name. Even if he desperately didn't want to use this magical energy, it still activated. As this, Arash's noble phantasm, the light and heat gradually disappeared. The army of the River of Death had completely disappeared. At the same time, more than half of the eastern part of Cairo had been wiped off the map. Only 2 places still remained. The place where Kazuya blocked with Avalon. The place where Enkidu blocked with his noble phantasm. Not much time had passed since the disappearance of the Zamalek Island. The eastern part of Cairo had been completely erased from the map. The waters of the Nile River slowly flowed into the large pit in the land. Perhaps, this place would become Nile River in the future. 289. The final battle. Where's Alucard? Is he still alive? Kazuya looked around. In fact, from the moment Alucard freed the River of Death, he had lost the connection between himself and Alucard. Now, the surroundings were empty once again. There was no blood to suck. Maybe. Kazuya casually looked at the package in his hands and took out a stone from it. Earlier, as a precaution, he had brought everything he needed with him. Now it seemed like a wise decision. especially the remaining manuscripts. Fortunately, he had taken an extra trip to retrieve them, otherwise, it would have been a disaster. In the midst of this noble phantasm's attack, probably nothing would be left. Now, only 2 points remained, and a piece of land backed by the Nile River like a solitary island. Perhaps it would be called an island later. Arash fired the arrow from that location, shooting it towards the Nile River with his back facing it. It was uncertain, the power of this arrow exceeded his imagination. But, unexpectedly, the Holy Grail is still here. Well, whatever. Watching the rolling river approaching, Kazuya sighed slightly. We can only cover it up with a meteorite, right? Fortunately, it seems that many people in Cairo have evacuated. The official statement could be that a meteorite was discovered in advance, but it couldn't be stopped, so people were evacuated. How about that? Ripples began to spread through the muddy soil, and when the nearby water surface calmed down a bit, they walked over, heading towards the small island formed by Arash's arrow. Otherwise, on these thin mud columns under their feet, it wouldn't be surprising if they collapsed at any moment. Although he could swim, getting the precious manuscripts wet would be troublesome. The next moment, his pupils slightly contracted. What is that? Alucard. A blood-red figure leapt from the ground, jumping past Kazuya. What's wrong? Why so surprised? Need some help, master. Earlier. Kazuya was stunned for a moment, now able to feel the connection. ISCC, you died Carlier, right? That's right, although it was too late, I managed to collect some blood and barely survived. Alucard smiled, but it seems like we've been targeted now. That's right. Kazuya looked over, able to see Enkidu breathing heavily, appearing unstable. But he was still alive and able to fight. And, he had set his sights on Alucard. Let's go. After taking down this lancer, only Castor remains. Well, maybe victory will be yours then. What are you saying? Alucard smiled and said, isn't that obvious? The final victory will definitely be mine. So, have you thought about what wish to entrust to the Holy Grail? A wish? My manuscripts were destroyed earlier. Let the Holy Grail repair them for me. Haha, so that's how it is. You really have your own personality. How about you? Do you have any wishes to make? No, not at all. I don't think that thing can fulfill any of my wishes. Alucard smiled and said, so. Let's get started. Let's go. Alucard took Kazuya to the small island formed by Arash's arrow, then looked at Enkidu on the side. The large pit was gradually filling up. The speed was fast after all, it was the Nile River. Countless streams flowed here, rumbling and rushing, making a huge noise. Alucard looked at Enkidu. Enkidu also looked over. It's just you now, but can you still fight in this state? Of course, Enkidu said with a tired body. Weapons didn't need fatigue. But now, he was really tired. In fact, he was about to return to the throne of heroes. There was still magical energy, but the injuries on his body were severe, and his master had already disappeared. That's right, that master had already died. Probably even Arash himself didn't anticipate such a powerful effect from his arrow. After all, it was amplified by 9 spells. Ozymandias's 3 spells, the Vortigern 3 spells, and Arash's 3 spells. All piled up. If Arash were to come back, he might say, did I really do this? Such words were possible. In the mages' associations and holy church near there, everything had completely disappeared. How could people inside survive? How could humans withstand such an attack? This was completely an attack of a high-yield nuclear bomb, even stronger than a simple nuclear bomb attack. After all, look at the deep pit here, almost 100 meters deep. Even a slightly smaller nuclear bomb might not be able to handle it. But, such a strike was indeed unleashed by Arash opening the arrow. The bounded field near the mages' associations and holy church were as fragile as paper, disintegrating without any resistance. His master initially used a spell to strengthen Enkidu. Before even uttering the first spell, it had disappeared, evaporated. He didn't even realize he had died. Move, my master. Yes, Kazuya said, stepping on the water surface. Ripples spread around, and he walked across the river to the other side. With his current control over ripples, he could actually walk on a waterfall, but it was better to be careful and conserve energy. Well, I'll go to the other side first. Kazuya waved his hand. At this moment, he didn't want to be involved here. The activation of Avalon consumed more magical energy than he imagined. Half of it disappeared in an instant. That is, equivalent to 15 resurrections. Add the additional amount lost from 3 resurrections, and it's 18 times. Only 10 more times left. Although he could replenish his magical energy, Avalon was a recognized thing. Aside from Artoria's magical energy, nothing else worked. So, good luck to you. Saying that, Kazuya stepped on the water surface, ripples spreading around, and step by step, he walked to the other side of the river. And then, here, it was the final battle of this Holy Grail war. Both Lancers unexpectedly survived to the end. 290 wishes. What is the strongest strategy in the Holy Grail war? The answer is to play it safe. It seems like that's exactly what the current Kazuya are doing. The 2 Lancers are engaged in a fierce battle, and the only one left playing it safe is Castor. However, it's not like he has no abilities at all. At the very least, his ability to stay alive is quite strong. At the other side of the battlefield, Alucard and Enkidu have abandoned their weapons and are now engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Fists and kicks are the primary methods of fighting at this point. Currently, it seems that Enkidu has an absolute advantage. He repeatedly knocks down Alucard and crushes his heart each time. At this rate, Alucard won't last much longer. How many lives does Alucard have left? 10 times? 8 times? Probably only that much. However, Enkidu is not in a good condition either. His body functions are deteriorating rapidly, and his injuries are accumulating. His vision is becoming a bit blurry. Bang! Alucard throws a powerful punch, sending Enkidu flying. Watching Enkidu tremble as he gets up from the ground, Alucard laughs. What's the matter? Has your weapon become useless? Can you still stand? Or are you going to die? Of course, I can still fight until I defeat you, Enkidu says with determination. Ahaha. Alucard laughs loudly. Exactly. Keep going. Keep standing up and attacking me. Let me tell you some good news. My lives have already been thoroughly killed by you. Now, in front of you, there is only one. As long as you pierce my heart, as long as you crush my heart, you will be the winner. But how much longer can you endure with those trembling steps of yours? 5 minutes, 1 minute, or just a few seconds? Alucard speaks, and then falls into a brief silence. What is driving your fighting spirit? Even if you return to the throne of heroes, it doesn't matter, right? Or are you worried about what wish I might make with the Holy Grail? Nothing. I just simply think I can win. Enkidu exhales and resumes his breathing, completely standing up, smiling. Ah, that's right. I can win. Bang. Alucard rushes towards Enkidu. Win. Let me see what you have to win with. Splash. In an instant, the outcome is decided. Both of their arms pierce through each other's chests. Alucard shatters Enkidu's spiritual core. Enkidu picarses Akato's heart. What? Alucard's pupils slightly contract, then he smiles. Beautiful. You didn't hesitate to use your own body as bait. Yes, that's right. So, did I win? Enkidu says, exhaling. Ah, yes, I won. Bang. Alucard directly charges at Enkidu. You won. Let me see what you have to win with. Plop. In an instant, the victory is decided. Both of their arms pierce through each other's chests. Alucard shatters Enkidu's spiritual core. Enkidu pierces Akato's heart. What? Alucard's pupils slightly contracted, then he smiled. Impressive, using your own body as bait without hesitation. Yes, so with that, I've won, right? Ah, yes, you've won, Alucard chuckled. So, the prophecy of that king has actually come true. But, you understand now, don't you? Are you human? Or a weapon? Weapons can't defeat monsters, only humans can. Am I human? Enkidu was momentarily stunned, then he smiled. Well, let's just say I am. Goodbye, I enjoyed our battle. I wonder if there'll be a chance like this again in the future. As he spoke, Enkidu's body gradually transformed into light, and just before disappearing, he looked around, noticing Alucard also fading away. Starting from his legs, bit by bit, he turned into ashes and vanished. Goodbye, my master. I had a great time this time. Is it over like this? Kazuya reaches out his hand to try to grab the ashes, but naturally, he doesn't catch anything. So, now, almost all the servants have exited the stage, and the masters as well. There is only one master left standing. The master who has been leisurely all along and his servant, who has also been lounging. Only these two are still alive and intact. Oh my, it seems to be over. Does that mean I am the final winner? Shakespeare looks at the distance in surprise. So, can I make a wish now? A wish? Oops, -1 didn't think I could win, and I forgot what wish to make. Whoosh, whoosh. There's a sound of something stepping on the water surface. Bartholomew Lorelei turns his head and looks at Kazuya, who have approached. What? Coming at this time, do you want to snatch the Holy Grail? Ah, that's right, if you really can resurrect infinitely, there is a possibility. No, I don't have that idea at all. Emerging from the water surface, Kazuya says as he looks at the people around, I just want to take a look, just see what wish the Holy Grail will fulfill in the end and what conclusion it will bring. That's all. Is that so? Bartholomew Lorelei shrugs indifferently and nods at the other magus. Is it you who won? Come on, make a wish, let the leyline continue. Yes, I understand. Carlos Copperfield nods, performs a salute, bends down in front of the Holy Grail, and says, what should I wish for? I know now. Yes, that's right, with this, he can fulfill his wish. Continue the leyline. What does that have to do with him? The next thing. Aha, the world spins. Before the magus could figure out what was going on, his body had already turned into countless particles. Master! Shakespeare exclaims in surprise. Too bad, this time in the Holy Grail War, all of our magus were wiped out. Not a single one left. Together with the people from the Holy Church, all gone, only me left. Saying that, Bartholomew Lorelei looks at the one man still here. Kurokawa Kazuya. If it weren't for his immortality, she would have killed Kurokawa Kazuya along with everyone else just now. But now, although, even if she said it, it wouldn't matter. Whether anyone believed it or not, even if someone believed it, what could they do? The mystical world is like this, she is Bartholomew. She is the lord of the clock tower, and she doesn't care if she's judged. Kazuya's mouth twitches slightly. I didn't see anything, alright, make your wish. Let me see how the Holy Grail fulfills wishes. Yes, I also want to see it, see how the Holy Grail fulfills wishes. Bartholomew Lorelei frowns slightly, says nothing, puts her hand on the Holy Grail filled with magic, and then says, so, start making your wish. 291 Echoes of the End. This Holy Grail war ended like this. The War of 7 and 7. Numerous magus, executors, and dead apostles died. The economic loss in Egypt was immeasurable. Cairo, the capital of Egypt and most significant city, had a large part of it turned into a massive pit. Connected to the Nile River, it was now transformed into a vast lake. Bartholomew Lorelei, as the final victor, successfully realized her wish to let the leyline continue. However, how long it can be extended is unknown. At least for now, there is no need to worry about the leyline disappearing completely by the year 2000. Fortunately, after fulfilling her wish, Bartholomew Lorelei breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, the wish was fulfilled. If she had paid such a high price and still failed, it would be regrettable. Honestly, she also had no face to return to the Mages Association like this. After stepping out, Bartholomew Lorelei felt somewhat complex as she looked at Kurokawa Kazuya. How should she deal with this person? Kill him. He couldn't be killed. If it were possible, she would have already done it, and, this person seemed to be everywhere. However, even if she couldn't kill him, she didn't want to see Kazuya again. She liked Kurokawa Kazuya's manga, but only to that extent. Liking someone's work doesn't mean you have to like the person, at least that's how she saw it. In other words, this time's matter is temporarily considered settled. I'll pretend I didn't see that your servant killed the entire clone squad. Correspondingly, in the future, don't appear in front of me. Yes, it's better not to appear in the clock tower. I'll treat it as if you never appeared in Cairo. Saying that, Kazuya felt that her movements had become somewhat difficult. What are you going to do? Kazuya said, already prepared to use command spell at any time. Bartholomew Lorelei placed her hand on Kazuya's chest, and a strange aura entered his body. Then she withdrew her hand. Nothing, just a curse. Bartholomew Lorelei sneered and slowly floated up. After all, magus are not servants, and flying is quite difficult. However, simply floating is easy for Bartholomew Lorelei. I don't want to see you again. So, I've placed this curse. In the future, you won't be able to get near London, or else your heart will feel intense pain. Anyway, you can't die, right? So, I won't kill you, just make you suffer pain. So, farewell. Kazuya touched his chest, watching Bartholomew Lorelei float to the other side, the western part of the Nile River, and as she disappeared into the deeper area, Kazuya smiled slightly, curse, but it seems it's already been lifted. Avalon, huh, this thing is quite useful. However, it seems that the magical energy has been consumed again. Only 11 times left. But, should we leave the Holy Grail here without taking it? Kazuya looked at the intact Holy Grail behind him and placed his hand on it. The next moment, originally, the Holy Grail, which looked intact, began to slowly peel off. Layer by layer, the outer layer began to fall off until, in the end, completely turned into dust. Kazuya was slightly surprised. What is this? Could it be that it reached its limit because it was used to extend the ley line? Or did Bartholomew Lorelei do something when I didn't notice? Mages Association. The Leyline's measurement room. This institution was built in 1970 to accurately respond to the accelerated depletion of the leylines. Since 1970, the leylines has been depleting at a speed several times faster than usual, expected to completely vanish by 2000. Is this, the descent speed of the leylines slower than yesterday by half? A magus looked at the instrument, surprised, and said, is it a coincidence? Or is there some other reason? Could it be? Did Lady Bartholomew Lorelei succeed? 1 month later. Cairo International Airport. Located about 15 kilometers northeast of the Egyptian capital, Cairo, this airport miraculously escaped destruction during the previous Holy Grail War. Although, for Arash's arrow, 15 kilometers is not a very long distance, but this time, the main target of the attack was Alucard's River of Death, not the airport. So, the airport did not suffer much damage, and afterward, they could easily return through here. Fortunately, I already visited the Egyptian Muskim before. Otherwise, it would have been a big loss. While waiting for the plane, Kazuya tried to reconstruct the destroyed original manuscript in his mind. He had drawn it once before, so redrawing it now was much simpler. This was the last original manuscript of this Holy Grail War, and once he finished it, all the gains from this war would be in his hands. However, he was curious about Kotomine Kirei. He hasn't been seen all this time. Did he give up on the matter we agreed on before? After neatly storing the newly drawn original manuscript, Kazuya stood up and walked around a bit. The entire airport was filled with a melancholic atmosphere. Most of Cairo was directly erased from the map. Although it was very surprising that there were no casualties among the personnel. Magus don't count as people. Anyway, besides magus, executors, and dead apostles, not a single person was harmed. Now, international news is praising the Egyptian disaster response measures. Dealing with such a thing would be impossible for the Holy Church or the Mages Association alone, Kazuya speculated. It's very likely that Ozymandias also did something behind the scenes. However, he didn't expect the entire eastern part of Cairo to disappear. Perhaps he did it to prevent their battle with Gilgamesh from affecting the entire city. Anyway, although there were no casualties, millions of people lost their homes, lost everything they had. It's still a headache-inducing situation. The UK was the first to speak out, deciding to respond to this natural disaster, demanding Egypt to disclose their evacuation methods and offering a substantial amount of money for aid. Surely, it's because the Mages Association behind them is operating. Now, even a part of this airport has been set aside, crowded with people, allowing them to temporarily settle here, waiting for the local government's response measures. It's really a series of unfortunate events. Egypt, 2 meteorites fell in such a short time, one in the desert, one in Cairo. 292 Echo. The situation here in Egypt is almost over. After this, I need to make a trip to the headquarters of the church to report on the events. What about you? Kotomine Kirei looked at the person next to him, Saber's master, Ishizaki Rito, and said. As for me, Ishizaki Rito pondered for a moment. I think I'll go back to Japan. There's nowhere else for me to go. Is that so? Kotomine Kirei set aside the neatly arranged relic remains and said, I believe you have potential. Ishizaki Rito blinked. What potential? The potential to become an executor. Ishizaki Rito's pupils slightly contracted, and for a moment, it felt like the world's time had stopped. He was afraid of this mysterious world. Just look at Cairo, most of it had already disappeared. Now, it was completely filled and turned into a massive, artificial lake. It should be considered an artificial lake, given that it was created by man. Terrifying, right? Although not a single person died, this outcome was built on the premise that someone had good intentions. But what if? What if someone possessed this power but had absolutely no good intentions? What would happen then? No need to say, the result would be simple. Without doing anything, just living a normal life at home, normal daily activities, and then die. He wouldn't even know how he died. So, he was very afraid. Afraid of this world, hoping that the mystery would quickly disappear so he could be safer. But, if he really wanted safety, he wouldn't have participated in this Holy Grail war, wouldn't have come here, even if it was just a moment of courage. He indeed came to Egypt. He genuinely participated in this Holy Grail war and survived. So, it was very contradictory. Moreover, not only that, when Kotomine Kirei mentioned introducing him to the church as an executor, his first thought was excitement. Even though he knew that this path would be much more dangerous than before. Look at this Holy Grail war. So many masters participated, and almost all the combatants, except for those who stayed in the church with Kotomine Kirei, were wiped out. Only 3 people barely survived. But after arriving at the church, they fell into a coma and haven't awakened since. It can be said that this is a very dangerous profession, where you can die at any moment, and even, may not be considered a human. And even if Kotomine Kirei claims he has potential, what kind of potential is that? For a long time to come, he probably would only have the strength he has now, which is to say, at the level of an ordinary person. He might get stronger in the future, but it wouldn't happen too quickly. With this kind of strength involved in that world, he might really dick. But, courage, how about it? Well, it seems I don't need to say much more. Kotomine Kirei stood up. I agree. Want to become an executor. That's good. Kotomine Kirei nodded. Then, I'll explain to the church. So, get ready. It's really tragic. Iwamoto Yu looked at the newspaper and sighed. Meteorites, luckily, they didn't fall on Japan. Not just that. Takeshi Motegi handed Iwamoto Yu a glass of water. Have you heard? It might not be meteorites but UFOs. Alien spaceships. UFOs. Yeah, because many enthusiasts say, we didn't discover such huge meteorites approaching Earth, so could it be UFOs? Were they invisible at first? So, what about the evacuation in Cairo? They say not a single person died, although it's likely that even if there were casualties, it was covered up. But considering the speed of evacuation, the government should have known long ago. Iwamoto Yu sighed, closed the newspaper slowly, and took a sip of water. That's true. Takeshi Motegi put his hand on his chin and thought. By the way, do you think there was a great battle in Egypt, and the aftermath is what happened in Cairo? It's like saving the world. In the end, the hero successfully defeated the enemy, saving the world. Even though no one knows, Cairo witnessed all of this, something like that. You're saying it's like a manga. Iwamoto Yu twitched his mouth. Isn't that impossible in reality? I'm saying it's just like a manga. Iwamoto Yu seemed to think of something and brightened up. Are you saying? That's right. With such a great material, writing it as a manga must be interesting, right? Start with, the truth behind Cairo's disappearance, use reverse storytelling, and now this news is quite popular, giving people a sense of immersion, like, wow, something like this happened in Cairo. What do you think? Well, indeed, it's possible. Wamoto Yu nodded. Your brain is quite creative. How about it, feeling excited? That's right. Iwamoto Yu nodded. I happen to have a promising newcomer. She has been gaining some attention recently. Oh, is it that Takato? Iwamoto Yu seemed to remember the real name. Shoji Asami, right. That's right. Iwamoto Yu finished his water, picked up his coat nearby, and said, she has been drawing manga for several years, and she even had a serialization for a while, although it was cut off after a few chapters. But, in my opinion, she still has great potential. Is that so? By the way, how is Kurikawa-sensei's new manga doing? Iwamoto Yu sighed slightly. This one, as always, the results are explosive, or you could say it's too much. It can only be said that it's truly Kurokawa-sensei. By the way, he's already on his third serialization on Jump, right? Yeah, but that, Fate Stay Night, is coming to an end. Oh, Takeshi Motegi was surprised. It has been serialized for 3 or 4 years, right? Iwamoto Yu nodded. At first, when this manga was halfway through serialization, it happened to coincide with JUMP's golden period, so at that time, the editors made a decision. They subtly released a piece of news and quickly heated it up. That was, Kurokawa Kazuya originally had no intention of drawing the sequel to Fate and was focusing mostly on the new manga. Therefore, the progress of the sequel is slow. At the same time, the manga apologized, and the release frequency changed from once a week to once a month. The longest time was 1 chapter every 3 months. Now, there are still 3 chapters left to conclude. However, because of Kurokawa Kazuya's new manga, the heat of Jump rose once again. Moreover, the value of Fate Stay Night is almost drained, so they are planning to broadcast the remaining 3 chapters in one go and create some news. 293 Leyline. Meow. Under the sunlight, a little cat stretched lazily, yawned, and looked at the siblings playing nearby. No, the brother and sister seemed a bit bewildered. It felt like a long time had passed. Since Kurokawa Kazumi disappeared somewhere, that guy had been too lazy to take care of it. As long as it wasn't starved to death, it was fine. Afterward, he simply threw it here. Threw it into the Emiya residence. Watching the playing siblings, it leapt lightly against the wall and ran away. Mumi. Kohana ran away again. Ilyasvili called out, watching Kohana running along the wall. Yes, let me see. Emiya Mumi smiled, slowly stood up, and said, Kohana. Where are you? I want to see too. Ilyasvili quickly followed. I want to see too. Sure. Kohana turned around slowly, opened its mouth slightly, made a few jumps, and disappeared. In an unknown LC. Menacing. An unusual aura continuously emanated. Inside, countless cats gathered. Meow, so, it begins. Kohana in the middle of the crowd said, and all the cats began to breathe slowly. Ripple. Kohana looked at the situation in satisfaction, smiled, and swayed its tail behind it in a posture much more agile than an ordinary cat. Smiled. Just like this. Before long, it would return with its own army. An army of cats that could create ripples. Meow. Kohana. Is it here? Kohana. Kohana shivered all over and hurriedly said, all cats, disperse. Swoosh. After a while, Emiya Mumi and Ilyasvili walked over. Is it here? What's around here? Is there something? Clock Tower. Did you hear? The clone squad was completely wiped out in this Holy Grail war. Not only that, the Holy Church, and the dead apostles as well, it's too tragic. Have you seen the pictures of the big pit in Cairo? So huge, they say it was created by servants. Such voices filled the entire clock tower. This was currently the biggest news. It directly concerned everyone here. If the ley line disappeared, magus would cease to exist, so the continuation of the ley line naturally attracted the attention of countless magus. In this Holy Grail war, all the dead apostles who participated were wiped out, and there were even several high-ranking dead apostles among them. The countless executors sent by the Holy Church were almost killed, with only a few surviving. As for the Mages Association, several magus who were deployed, except for one who left midway, and Bartholomew Lorelei, the rest were all wiped out. Waver Velvet looked at the few pictures in front of him, lit a match, slowly lit a cigar, and took a puff. I have never encountered such a thing, I don't know whether to say fortunate or not. Such an attack, he couldn't survive. Should I say Bartholomew Lorelei is indeed Bartholomew? Even in such a situation, she is unscathed, and even her wish is fulfilled, continuing the ley line. Compared to that, I'm really far behind. The Lord of the Clock Tower. That was his target now. He was very close to that position, just one step away. The last step, the clone squads was wiped out. This matter did not affect Balthasar in any way. Moreover, Bartholomew Lorelei was surprised to find, her reputation had even risen. Although she was the head of the Bartholomew family, the Lord of the Clock Tower, the leader of the aristocratic faction. But, after all, she was still young. There were still people who looked down on her, and respecting her was just based on the name, Bartholomew, rather than Lorelei. Although she didn't mind. To her, the important thing was still Bartholomew, rather than her own name, Lorelei. The people of the clock tower were all amazed at the tragedy that happened in Cairo, the war that completely changed the terrain, and the attack that sent half of Cairo into the sky. This was the Holy Grail War. This was the battle between servants. No matter how much information they knew beforehand, no matter how much they bragged about the combat power of servants, it couldn't compare to this. It couldn't compare to the Cairo that showed everything. Everyone could see it. Anyone could see it. The original Cairo, the current large lake. The leyline measurement room. How is it going? Bartholomew Lorelei, who had been here for several days, asked the personnel in charge. Yes. It's almost done. The rate of decline of the leyline has a clear slowdown. It has been preliminarily determined that it has changed half the speed of the original 2000 years. In other words, can the isoline that was supposed to decline by 2000 now last until 2008? Asterisk. Yes. 8 years. Bartholomew Lorelei wrinkled her brows slightly. However, this was already the limit. The Holy Grail also had its limits. If the Holy Grail allowed others to realize the third magic, it meant that there was no need to keep it when the Holy Grail disappeared, and it would have shattered. And now, the situation was similar. The Holy Grail continued the leyline, but it was not a simple matter that could be achieved with magical power. Such a method could only be used once, and the Holy Grail disappeared completely, shattered. In such a situation, even Einsborn probably did not anticipate it. That's right. Jubstachate was currently in great distress. This shouldn't be the case. In Einsborn's castle, Jubstachate von Einsborn, leaning on the table, said with an unpleasant expression, "The Holy Grail has not yet completed the third magic. How could it disappear like this?" But he also knew very well that it was impossible for Bartholomew Lorelei to hide these things, and there was no need for her to do so. It must be like this. I understand, it must be like this. Art technology is not enough. Jubstachate clenched his fists. The Holy Grail in Fuyuki City has been broken to a certain extent. The repair we made is not complete, it is not the original, so it shattered. It must be like this, it must be like this. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Did it fail? The only surviving dead apostle, Isaac Barnes, looked at his healed hand and asked the magus Louis Schmidt next to him. Well, maybe. Louis Schmidt sighed slightly. Indeed, there was no sound, it seems to have failed. If it failed, then start the next one. Isaac Barnes said with an unchanged face, continue the next experiment. 294 The beginning of a new journey. The Holy Grail cannot accomplish things beyond human capabilities. It is not truly all-powerful. In other words, the leyline can indeed be artificially extended by certain means, and that's exactly what happened. It was supposed to conclude in 1970, but for various reasons, it was prolonged until 2000. However, even this extension reached its limit. The Mages Association could not find any other methods. Except for the Holy Grail. But, the Holy Grail cannot accomplish things beyond human capabilities. What it does is essentially the same as what they do, only speeding up the process. Slowing down the decline of the leyline is something it can achieve. Completely preventing the leyline from deteriorating further, well, that's a different story. Perhaps the Holy Grail filled with the blood of the God Son could achieve that. However, it's just wishful thinking, as no one knows for sure if the Holy Grail can actually do that. After all, no one has ever used it for such purposes. The Holy Grail is no different. Humans also do not know what the Holy Grail, even the Holy Grail, can or cannot do. They never truly understand that entity, themselves. They never know what they can or cannot achieve, only through numerous attempts can they roughly conclude. However, all of this has already ended in this world. At least, the story of the Holy Grail has truly concluded in this world. In the future, there might be many subspecies Holy Grail wars, or perhaps something called the Moon Holy Grail War, in this world. However, all of this has nothing to do with the original Holy Grail in Fuyuki City. The Holy Grail has already turned to dust, blown away with the wind, settling in the lake formed during its destruction. In that case, we can completely let her try drawing a Holy Grail war. I mean, we can let her draw the Fate series. On their way back to Mifune City, Kazuya chatted about it. But, Iwamoto Yu hesitated for a moment. Isn't it inappropriate to make a series based on the events in Cairo? It doesn't necessarily have to be in Cairo. Kazuya said. We can let her draw it in another location, another place where a Holy Grail war happened, right? Kazuya fell silent for a moment before saying, for example, during the Fourth Holy Grail War, the Mages Association noticed the Holy Grail for various reasons, took it away, and then there was a 7v7 Holy Grail war led by the Mages Association. If the plot is interesting enough, we can treat it as an official work and serialize it. Is that so? Iwamoto Yu nodded. I'll consider it and discuss it with that mangaka. Oh, Kurokawa-san, the latest volume of Bleach is out. Would you like to know its ranking? The ranking probably isn't very high. While making a phone call, Kazuya looked out of the window. After all, it's been a long time since the Soul Society arc, hasn't it? Haha, that's true, but the previous parts are still exciting. Well then, I'll just tell you directly, it's in third place. Alright, got it. Hearing the voice from the other end of the phone, Iwamoto Yu sighed slightly. This guy is not excited at all, it's so natural. After all, he is not an ordinary mangaka. If it were an ordinary mangaka, he would surely be excited and jumping around now. You know, Jump is at its peak right now. Series like Dragon Ball, Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and many others are currently shining on Jump. And thanks to its exquisite quality, surpassing the animation standards of the CRA, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has once again ignited the popularity of the JoJo series, reaching the top spot several times. On the other hand, although the anime of Dragon Ball has already started, its quality is just above average, not at the level of JoJo. There's quite a difference in terms of effectiveness. Simply put, JoJo is currently exploding in popularity, especially after the third part, and thanks to the anime adaptation, it has once again surpassed the standards of its time. In comparison, the Dragon Ball anime, although it has already started, is not at the level of JoJo. It lacks quite a bit in terms of effectiveness. Moreover, not every person who reads manga will send back the survey form. Under such circumstances, a new work that can surge directly into the top 3 at this time. Perhaps, it's because of Kurokawa Kazuya's fame. It's precisely because of this situation that the current chief editor of JUMC is willing to conclude another Money Tree, Fate, releasing the last 3 chapters. Otherwise, even if there are only 3 chapters left, he wouldn't be surprised if it took a year to serialize them. In Iwamoto Yu's heart, this chief editor really doesn't understand manga, he is a thorough businessman. But, even such a businessman has things he cannot reach, things he dare not touch, like Kurokawa Kazuya. He creates manga, he has never been through a serialization meeting. He directly says, get ready to serialize this. Perhaps the chief editor has never seen this before. After all, even if there are only 3 chapters left, it would surely be approved in a serialization meeting. Hey, what's wrong? Huh, no, I was just thinking a bit more, haha. Well, let's temporarily confirm things like this for now. Is there anything else? Kurokawa-sensei. No, this is enough. Kazuya chatted for a while and then hung up the phone. He is also thinking. His system doesn't have much guidance, and he currently holds one, not knowing what kind of power his future noble phantasm will have. So, he wants to try. If others create a setting or story for his characters, can he transform them using the spell? In that case, can he use the system to conduct a lottery? Now, he has more energy and can slowly try these things. After all, apart from the expected launch of the Mars Pioneer mission, which is scheduled to begin in 2030, and the possibility of returning with samples from Mars, there is still more than 30 years before that happens. 30 years, even if one manga is drawn every 3 years, there will be more than 10 of them. He wonders what kind of abilities he will have at that time. He's looking forward to it. Sir, we've arrived in Mifune City. Is there any specific place you'd like to go? Well, do you know the Ryogi family? Ryogi. I've heard a little. Ah, you mean that black-haired girl? Yes, that's right. Take me to the Ryogi family. I understand, please sit tight. We should be there in about 10 minutes. 295 Eyes in the shadows. Huh. Iwamoto Yu let out a sigh of relief as he sat in the car heading to the home of the mangaka. In reality, he had been harboring a sense of satisfaction all along. While the chief editor of Jump led the magazine to its peak, the atmosphere had deteriorated. The overall atmosphere in the Jump editorial department was not as good as before. The older editors were still okay, but the new ones brought in by the chief editor didn't treat their mangaka like they were from their generation, more like colleagues and partners. It was simply a matter of work. However, given the current popularity of Jump, there was indeed confidence. The combined sales of the two leading manga magazines behind Jump were still not as high. Leading the way. Among them, the works of Kurokawa Kazuya was particularly noteworthy. Moreover, Kurokawa Kazuya was not just a regular highly popular mangaka. He was wealthy, owned an animation production company, and even had a theme park worth billions of dollars. Even the chief editor of Jump didn't dare to interfere too much with him. Exceptional freedom. Even the editor in charge, like Iwamoto Yu, felt at ease because Kurokawa Kazuya had said, "Changing editors for me is too troublesome." It must be admitted that there was indeed a thought of replacing him from above, but if Kurokawa Kazuya disagreed, there was nothing that could be done. After all, the collaboration had to continue. "Akataka-san, have you been waiting long?" Seeing the door being pushed open almost the moment he knocked, Kazuya waved his hand with a slightly awkward expression. "No, I just happened to be getting ready to go out." Since it was someone he was more familiar with, like Akataka Suzurugi, Kazuya's face showed a slightly stiff smile. It seemed like he hadn't smiled much lately. "I still have some matters to attend to. Shiki-sama is in her room, can you find your way? Will you be okay by yourself for a while?" What's going on?" Kazuya asked with some confusion. However, judging from Akataka's expression, it shouldn't be anything major. Still, he activated his stand while asking, "Is it something serious?" "No, it's just a trivial matter related to the black market. Nothing that should cause any trouble, just a bit tricky to handle when showing off our strength without going overboard." Yes, I see. Kazuya understood. This kind of thing wasn't the first time. There were always those who thought they were strong, challenging the established underworld. Generally, those aged below 20 who had just entered this world tended to do that, and after being taught a lesson, they usually settled down. After all, compared to these professional combatants, how could ordinary people compete in terms of combat power? But it was just a group of ordinary people, and it would end soon. Kazuya didn't mind. He had been here several times before and stayed here several times. He was already quite familiar with the layout of the Ryogi family. Then Kazuya couldn't find Shiki Ryugi. "Shiki-sama, right, she's at school, she hasn't come back yet." Oh, right, haha. Kazuya smiled awkwardly before remembering, "But I did call her and thought she might wait for me and give me a heads up or something. I didn't expect her to already be at school. Kurokawa-san, would you like to wait here for a while? Shiki-sama will be back in a few hours." "No, forget it. It's a good time for me to pick her up. I remember she goes to a school nearby, right?" "Yes, that's right. Well, then I'll pick her up," Kazuya said as he opened the door and walked out. Looking at the scenery on the street, he couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. Unconsciously, he had been in this world for almost 10 years. He arrived in this world in 1983. Now it was 1992, and soon it would be exactly 10 years. The passage of time had brought about many changes, and Shiki had grown up like an ordinary child, spending her elementary school years and entering middle school. He had also steadily reached his current status. Whether in the visible or invisible world, he had gained some influence. It felt good. Walking on the streets, Kazuya appeared relaxed. He had always been like this, after all. There was nothing chasing him from behind, and even if there was, it was his own dreams and pursuits. Taking the opportunity to relax a bit, not for any other reason, just calmly looking at the world with expectations. At that moment, he would find, even in the repetitive scenery seen countless times, there was an inexplicable sense of tranquility. But Akataka-san should have told me directly if Shiki isn't here. Kazuya, at the school gate, found a bookstore, flipping through old books while waiting for the school to finish. Around 3:30 in the afternoon. The school bell rang, indicating the end of school. Kazuya slowly walked out. Watching the students come out of the school gate one by one, he quickly spotted Shiki. After all, she was wearing a kimono. It was easy to spot. Shiki. Shiki blinked for a moment, then smiled slightly when she saw the approaching figure. After that, she returned to her usual expression. Oh, it's you. When did you come back? Just now, Kazuya smiled and said, since there's nothing much, I came back to see you first. But, what's the matter? Cairo has such a big incident, aren't you worried about me at all? I thought you would be waiting for me at home. What is there to worry about? Shiki walked alongside Kazuya towards the Ryogi residence and said as she walked, you won't run into any trouble, right? There's no need to worry at all. But, well, what's wrong? Nothing, as long as you're okay. Ah, anything happened at home? No, maybe it's just my illusion, but I always feel like someone is looking at us from over there. Impossible, right? Shiki laughed, when did your intuition surpass mine? If I didn't notice something, you wouldn't be able to either, right? Yeah, well, generally speaking, that was true, but if it was a special circumstance. For example, 296 maintaining the status quo. There was something peculiar about how Shiki felt towards Kazuya. Before meeting Kazuya, she had a grandfather. For a long time, he had lost his sanity, imprisoned in a dungeon for nearly 20 years. However, she managed to maintain her current self, remaining alone without succumbing to the teachings he left behind. Her grandfather, in the final moments of his life, regained consciousness like a last burst of light. Afterwards, not long after, she encountered Kazuya. He believed in her. He knew a lot, but still. Whether it was Shiki or Shiki, in his eyes, they were not murderers, they were just two children sharing a body. It should be like that. She didn't know what made him so confident. Shiki attempted to kill Kazuya, but she failed. The reason for the failure wasn't because she couldn't defeat him or anything like that. Although he occasionally resisted, it was more like a joke. Most of the time, he wouldn't do anything. But she still couldn't bring herself to harm him. This man had a mysterious confidence that he absolutely wouldn't take action. As Shiki watched Kazuya walking beside her, holding her hand, several heads taller than her, she couldn't understand why he had so much faith in her. Space seemed to meld like the surface of water. Something emerged from that space. It was a man wearing a black robe-like coat. He didn't stare at the two walking ahead, instead, he headed in the opposite direction. Who is that man? The man's name was Araya Soren. 7 days ago, he discovered Shiki and targeted her. He possessed a concealed ability that even Shiki's mystic eyes couldn't detect. However, that man noticed. Just staring at him for a while, he realized that something was wrong. But, regardless of who that man was, he couldn't disrupt his actions. Shiki, there's something off about that body. 7 days were enough for Araya Soren to make a rough judgment. If, by any chance, he unintentionally saw the person as he imagined him to be. Then, he could achieve what he desired. The root. When Shiki realized the root, it wasn't the result, it was the process. What he saw was what happened after reaching the root. But that was simple. If he could truly achieve it. He attempted it several times, but each time, he unintentionally triggered a counterforce. Previous attempts failed due to various unexpected reasons. But now he saw the greatest possibility. Let's observe for now. Araya Soren made a decision. 200 years was nothing compared to these few days, and even a few years wouldn't matter. He had to find the most suitable time. To prevent the counterforce from activating again, it was necessary to completely isolate the temple, much like a different world. But all of this depended on his confirmation. Once he confirmed everything, he could take action. When the temple was complete, he could take action, get hold of that person, get Shiki. The premise for all this was that everything went as he expected. Was it an illusion? At a corner, Kazuya and Shiki hid, peeking out their heads to look at the person behind them, furrowing their brows. I told you, didn't I? Shiki sighed slightly. How could anyone be tailing me? Really? Maybe. Kazuya nodded. But Shiki, anyway, I've participated in 2 Holy Grail wars. Maybe I can't match you in intuition, but I have a skill called Mind's Eye. Shiki nodded. Are you saying you've gained the ability called Mind's Eye from your manga? No, I'm just using it as a metaphor. Kazuya sighed. After all, I've encountered various battles. There's always a strange premonition. A feeling like someone is watching me. Just now, it was a gaze that seemed to be examining me. But there was nothing, perhaps. It really was just an illusion. Kazuya continued talking as he pulled Shiki forward. Anyway, let's go back for dinner, it's getting late. You should tell me more about the situation in Cairo. You can rest assured. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Holding Shiki's hand, Kazuya walked slowly, stepping lightly. How's school? Have you made any friends? No, Shiki said decisively. I don't need something like that. Friends and such. The two of them chatted casually, and soon they reached the Ryugi residence, coincidentally seeing a group of people passing by from the side. Akataka-san, is everything over? Shiki-sama, you're back. After giving a slight bow to Shiki, Akataka turned to Kazuya and said, it's nothing difficult, it's simple to handle. However, there have been more situations like this recently. It's the same every year, don't worry about it. Shiki nonchalantly remarked. Every year when students start school, there are always several groups of people who think they're strong, and the number of people they gather is enough to seize a part of the profits. Just casually discipline a couple of them, and it's done. Shiki-sama is correct. There's nothing to worry about. In a room in the Ryugi residence, the head of the Ryugi family looked at the group of people at the door, slowly closing the window, and asked those inside the room, how is he? Kurikawa Kazuya. Indeed, if it's for the continuation of the Ryugi family, he is a good choice, however. He is too extraordinary. The winner of 2 Holy Grail wars, and he could have obtained the Holy Grail with just one more step. If he truly desired it. However, he gave up both times. Perhaps others may not know, but we are well aware. Moreover, his assets are not inferior to those of the Ryugi family. Shiki is definitely impossible to marry off. So, is it possible for someone like him to marry in? I don't think there's anything in the Ryugi family that can attract him. But still, we should give it a try. Considering Shiki's personality, I don't think there are any other possibilities. In fact, it is true. Several years have passed, and she hasn't made a single friend in school. She keeps everyone away, and countless people feel fear towards her. There is only one person beside her who is so self-confident. Well, Shiki is still young. The head pondered for a moment. Let's wait for 2 more years to see the situation. If there's still no change, I will talk to him in detail. For now, let's maintain the current situation. 297. Spiral the Holy Grail War. If it were just hearsay, not many people would care. If it were just a ritual from legends that could grant wishes, not many would be concerned. However, the recent incidents that occurred a little over a month ago unequivocally confirmed the feasibility and brutality of the Holy Grail War. The ley line was successfully continued, proving that the Holy Grail indeed possessed the ability to grant wishes. However, as a consequence, much of Cairo had already vanished, providing ample evidence of the cruelty of the Holy Grail War. A single careless move could result in the death of countless people, but how many cared about the second point? Araya Soren didn't know. But there probably weren't many. Among magus, those who feared death were only a minority. For the sake of reaching the root, many were willing to sacrifice their lives, even if it was just a 1 in a million, 1 in a billion, or even 1 in a trillion chance. Araya Soren was the same, as long as there was hope. Kurikawa Kazuya. This name, once again, gained widespread fame in the entire mystic world due to this Holy Grail War. Countless people purchased his manga, just to see, how is this Holy Grail War that happened in the parallel world? What kind of existence were the servants? Although there was already a huge disparity with this world, there were still some aspects that could be used as a reference. At the same time, a magical marketplace began selling in the underworld of this world. The underworld, generally used for selling drugs, military supplies, and other illegal items, places that went against ethics and laws. In the underworld, it was similar. It sold things prohibited by the Mages Association. Among them was a magical marketplace, the False Holy Grail. That was the name of the magical marketplace. In the world of magus, geniuses were never in short supply. Since the Holy Grail War had been exposed, there was a possibility that it could be researched. Although it couldn't achieve the precision of a Holy Grail capable of granting wishes, there was another function. That was the summoning of servants. As long as magical energy was injected into the false Holy Grail, it was possible to summon 1 to 3 servants. Of course, Through experimentation, it was far from the servants in the regular Holy Grail War, who could wipe out half of Cairo from the map. Due to the incomplete nature of the summoning ritual, the strength of the servants not only greatly decreased but also to the extent that powerful magicians could potentially defeat them. Often, there were cases of memory confusion and attacks on allies. Some servants, upon arrival, didn't even have memories and were just puppet-like entities. Of course, they couldn't use noble phantasms. Summoning a heroic spirit like Gilgamesh was a jackpot because his noble phantasm could be used without releasing his true name. Summoning a heroic spirit like King Arthur was a loss because this type of heroic spirit couldn't use Excalibur, let alone the invisible air. As for command spells, although they still existed and could force servants into obedience, forget about spatial transfers and the like. The reason for being able to command a servant is simply because, although the level of command spells has severely declined, none of the three may necessarily be better than the one before, and it also has a certain amount of damage to the body. However, the level of the servant has also declined. Nevertheless, regardless of that, a servant is still a powerful familiar, arguably the strongest kind of familiar. However, this kind of familiar also has another significant drawback: it can only exist for 7 days. However, that is already sufficient, especially for testing someone. Araya Soren placed his hand on the magical marketplace he had bought. My origin is still. Respond to my origin. Awaken from the balance. Respond to my summon. Manifest. Chirp. The light instantly stole the realization of his eyeballs, and by the time he turned around again, something had already appeared in front of him. An entity emitting an abnormal aura, in an instant. He felt the magical energy in his body being pulled up, forming 3 command spells on the back of his hand. So, the strength of command spells depends on the magical energy intensity within my body. His body swayed a little, but immediately stopped. The magical marketplace turned into powder. This thing is disposable and can only be used once. Who made these things is unknown, and there's no need to know. He just purchased and used them. In front of him was an entity, a servant. So, who are you? What is your class? What is your true name? Tell me everything. Saying that, he didn't hesitate to use a command spell. Anyway, it can only be used once, and something that will be discarded later. There is no need to be frugal with command spells. 1. Who am I? Don't you know your own true name? It seems like your consciousness isn't very clear. Araya Soren's face remained unchanged, just like his origin. It seemed like everything had frozen, but it's okay, come with me. Swoosh, in the next moment, the constantly opened bounded field for precaution was cut open. However, after all, it's just a pseudo-servant. This time was already enough for Araya Soren to react. I command you, do not lay hands on me. 2 remaining command spells once again dissipated, leaving only the last one. Looking at the unknown servant stiffening there, Araya Soren took 2 steps forward. Is it because your magical energy is depleted? If the bounded field cannot be sustained, or should I say even if it is weakened, you are still a servant, right? Let's test it out first. Follow me, servant. Not knowing the class, not knowing the name, Araya Soren just referred to this summoned familiar as servant. After a while, he arrived at a place not far from the Ryogi residence, then slowly concealed himself, and used the last command spell to say, do not leave this place, kill everyone passing through here. Roar. That's good. Araya Soren nodded. Other people are not a concern, but that Kurikawa Kazuya. The time he spent with both Ryojis is too long. If he were just an ordinary person, it wouldn't matter, but he possesses strength. Leaving him alone is too dangerous. Kill him first. After setting up the servant, he left. He has been collecting materials lately, preparing to set up a temple for later use against the counterforce. At the same time, he also wanted to verify the contradictory spiral. 298 eliminated targets. Well, after all, it's been over a month, and there are still some things at the company. I won't stay here tonight, Kazuya said to Shiki while putting on his coat. I'll come see you again tomorrow. Suit yourself. It doesn't matter if you don't come. Kazuya smiled. By the way, Shiki, how about we go on a trip together sometime? You haven't left Japan yet, right? It would be nice to see different places. A trip. Shiki lay on the bed, blinked at Kazuya, and said, sure, but I don't really have a specific place I want to go. Alright, I'll figure it out for you. Kazuya chuckled. One day, we'll find something you like. See you tomorrow. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Opening the door, Kazuya slowly left the Ryugi residence. He walked along the nearby road. He didn't drive here, and the company was a bit of a distance away. Taking a taxi would be faster. However, roar, behind him, something roared and rushed towards him. Stop! In an instant, a golden ripple of light flashed through Kazuya's pupils, and the approaching figure came to a halt. This is Darius III. Kazuya frowned at the figure, looked around, and said, Servant. Is this another variant Holy Grail war? But why is it appearing here? Is it targeting me, or is it targeting Shiki? While speaking, Kazuya tried to move, but he couldn't budge an inch against the servant Darius III. But, it's too weak. Compared to the ones I faced before, it's completely inadequate. And what's with its magical energy? Is it E rank? Probably not even E rank. No magecraft kill. No resistance to magical energy at E rank. And yet, it boldly charges at me. Kazuya extended his hand. Ripple's energy wrapped around it, and in an instant, pierced through the chest of the servant with a ripple energy, shattering its spiritual core. It seems like dealing with this isn't my job, but someone from the Ryugi family, right? If not, then maybe it's some information related to the Mystic Eyes I purchased on the Mystic Eyes collection train. After all, there were many magus and familiars present at that time. Well, unless there's a problem with their brains, or they've completely deviated from the magical world, there are some people like that. Another variant Holy Grail war. That's not bad. Anyway, it's still a summoned servant. However, in front of someone with mystic eyes like him, without a certain level of resistance to magical energy, they are easy prey. He knew that from facing Deermood earlier. Although summoning a servant has led to a significant decrease in their magical energy level, if a true Darius III were summoned as a servant, not only magical energy, relying on his own strength, he could easily break free from the binding of Kazuya's mystic eyes. But, unfortunately, this is not the real Darius III. Just an imposter. With a low level of resistance to magical energy, there's some pressure if it's an ambush, but even though it suddenly rushed over, Kazuya already knew, I'm right here, you know. Although its speed is not slow, however, Kazuya's reflexes have gone through numerous battles using his mystic eyes and watching many real servants fight, growing significantly. It was simple to react to something of this level, although it's a bit regrettable to say so. Just some small fry, well, it's better to investigate first. This matter must be reported to the head of the Ryugi family. They need to make some preparations, otherwise things might get messy. After all, if something like this happens for the first time, it might happen again, and not everyone possesses high-level mystic eyes. Taken out? Araya Soren exclaimed in disbelief. Now, how many seconds have passed since the battle? He just sensed the start of the fight, and when he tried to connect to his own vision, the result was that he had already been taken out? So fast, and so powerful. If his magical energy were still intact, he might have gone to investigate himself, but in his current state, his magical energy was almost non-existent. It only preserved enough magical energy to survive. That false Holy Grail, magical foundation was truly a trap. Although the effect was indeed there, it overdrew the meager source in his body. For an average magus, this would likely significantly reduce their lifespan. However, all this didn't matter to him, to someone who had lived for 2 centuries. Darius III. As Kurikawa Kazuya indeed said. Araya Soren recovered his magical energy while pondering, aside from the powerful mystic eyes. Why did he recognize that servant at a glance? This servant should not have appeared in any of the past Holy Grail wars. What does this guy still hold in his hands? Araya Soren's heart couldn't help but feel a hint of impatience. His target was Shiki Ryugi. However, as long as Kazuya was there, he couldn't get close. In an instant, he killed the servant. As expected, do I need high-level mystic eyes killed to deal with him? Araya Soren thought to himself. He knew that something like high-level mystic eyes could produce similar effects. Knowing that it existed, he also knew how to obtain it. So, let's make a quick trip next. If he doesn't deal with Kazuya's mystic eyes, everything is in vain. He's too much of an eyesore. London Clock Tower. I didn't expect to welcome Lady Bartholomeo's visit. It's an honor for the Tasaka family. Tasaka Tokiomi smile, looking at the entering women. Bartholomew Lorelei simply acknowledged, taking out a scroll. Someone entrusted this to me for you. For me? That's correct, Bartholomew Lorelei nodded. What is this? Tasaka Tokiomi looked at the scroll on the table with some confusion. A magic crest. Tasaka Tokiomi's pupils slightly contracted. However, this thing is not suitable for putting a magic crest. If stored for a long time, the quality may decline. This is for Tasaka Sakura. Bartholomew Lorelei said, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Leave this thing to her for disposal. Don't think I don't care. Of course, no matter how she decides to use this magic crest, I will provide corresponding conveniences. 299 Production issues in the Jojo Animation's office. When looking at the first episode of the freshly produced anime, Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, Kazuya couldn't help but feel a bit speechless. Jojo's bizarre adventure has temporarily concluded. Currently, Part 4 is still ongoing in the manga, and the production of Part 4's anime will have to wait until the manga serialization is completed. Within the company, several teams have been formed, working on multiple projects simultaneously. However, when faced with the anime that Kazuya wanted to see the most, the elite members were still concentrated to burn a significant amount of funds to achieve the ideal animation. Among them, Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, is undoubtedly one. Indeed. I thought I was watching Code Geass, not JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Hideaki Anno twitched his mouth slightly and said, well, yes, Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion, right? In reality, he wasn't entirely sure. Previously, there was just too much JoJo content. Originally, if they were only making a few anime, it wouldn't be like this. Still, Kazuya's insistence was a bit too severe. This is unacceptable. Redo this part. This episode is completely wrong. Start over. Such things made their dreams at night full of thoughts like how to fully express JoJo intact, how to achieve the president's expected effect. And so, before they could recover, they directly produced Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Even though they tried to avoid it, it still seemed to retain many JoJo characteristics. Not in the plot, but in the portrayal of the visuals. Music, poses, onomatopoeia. Although the production was excellent, it always felt a bit off. Yes, at this moment, Kazuya came back and said he wanted to see the progress of their work over the past month. What to do? Of course, bring it out. The result turned out to be like this. This is not the Lelouch I remember. Kazuya roared in his heart, but he just sighed a bit. Forget it, take a short break for now. Take 2 days off to adjust and come back to continue. He didn't think about changing the staff. After all, anime is not something you can just change personnel for. Talent is crucial, and experience is equally important. For people like them who have both experience and talent, they are not so easy to find. Although the company's departments have expanded quite a bit, they still need to produce Kazuya's anime, take on JUMP's anime, and also work on some anime they want to do and enjoy. Many tasks to handle. By the way, President, according to our cooperation with Jump, we should produce a Jump manga soon. Any ideas? Kazuya flipped through some manga. There are many he wants to do. Slam Dunk, Yu Yu Hakusho. Both of these haven't started production yet. If possible, he wants to see something different from the original. Especially the Slam Dunk anime. This can be said to be one of his childhood memories. The manga is without question, but for the anime. When he watched it as a child, it wasn't much. He just felt, basketball is cool, and, I want to play basketball too. But when he watched it as an adult, he felt like there were so many flaws. Suddenly, he felt, childhood is not so beautiful, it's just the memory embellishing it. It must be said that the Slam Dunk anime has many problems. For example, some original plotlines that almost completely deviate from the trajectory of the plot, such as the original plotlines between Rukawa and Sendo. Undoubtedly, this affected the coherence of the original work. Even the original author of Slam Dunk, Takehiko Inoue, mentioned in Real that it takes a few minutes to run from one end of the basketball court to the other. What the hell is this? Of course, this kind of thing is unavoidable for Kazuya. Just like JoJo, you can't just say time stops for 10 seconds and finish the entire animation in 10 seconds, it's nonsense. Even Kazuya sometimes thinks, does he have anything to do with not drawing the later plot of Slam Dunk? If he knew that later sponsors even withdrew their funding for the Slam Dunk anime, the reason is unclear, but considering Japan's current situation, it's not something he can't understand. Economic crisis, no money in hand, of course, withdraw funding. Although there is also dissatisfaction from the editorial department, there should be reasons in this regard. After all, Jump now. Shigeru Mizuki's work was cut off shortly after serialization, completely ignoring the emotions of this old mangaka who once brought glory to Jump. So, well, let's do this one, Slam Dunk. Let's make this into an anime. But, for this matter, you still need to discuss with the original author, try to make an anime that satisfies everyone. Hideaki Anno was slightly stunned. Is it okay to let the original author participate like this? Well, I don't have the idea of letting others dictate to you internal people. I just want to take care of the original author's emotions appropriately. Don't wait until after it's done, and the original author points to the work and scolds it. What is this thing? Is this my manga? Just fine. Yes. Hideaki Anno nodded. Please rest assured, President. Just as you said, anything produced by Jojo Animation must be a masterpiece. We will definitely present a satisfactory answer. Hideaki Anno said with a smile. After all, there is no need to worry about money at all, and there is no need to consider whether it sells well or not. What needs to be considered is whether he, as a producer, is satisfied or not, only making anime that he likes, only making high-quality anime. However, I'm not satisfied with the current production of Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. Ha, ha ha. Hideaki Anno felt a bit embarrassed. Although he couldn't say it looked bad, it did seem a bit off. Completely not worth the money burned. Alright, let's temporarily conclude this matter. Leave it to you to handle, and is there anything else? The matters of this period have been reported. Well, then, let's continue like this. After confirming what Jump wants to produce, call all relevant personnel together for a meeting to determine the next steps for the company. Kazuya said, preparing to start his own work. He was preparing the character cards for the servants, to be used later, but first, he had to see how things would progress in the future. 300. A stomachache sensation. In the shadows, following Shiki Ryugi, it had been several days. Araya Soren had confirmed that this girl was far from normal. Her body was the most direct connection to the root, and even, if this girl wanted to go to the root, to fulfill the Magus's long-cherished wish, it should be a relatively simple matter. The world was so unfair, countless people pursued things, put in a lifetime of effort, just for that 1 in a million, 1 in a billion chance, yet someone could achieve it effortlessly. Some might fall into despair, thinking that no matter what they did, they couldn't bridge the innate gap. And so, their journey would end there. Efforts might not guarantee returns. No efforts definitely meant no returns. Except for the protagonist. Araya Soren understood these sentiments well. With the passage of time, he had gradually forgotten why he pursued the route. The reasons were long gone, but he continued nonetheless. However, just as he was about to succeed, the counterforce activated once again. At least in Araya Soren's eyes, Kurakawa Kazuya was the counterforces. The person preventing him from taking action. I must come up with a foolproof plan. Back in his residence, Araya Soren pondered. He had tested Kurakawa Kazuya several times, lurking in the shadows to guide others into action. Before understanding the true Kurakawa Kazuya's strength, he wasn't planning to act himself. It wasn't that he feared death, it was just a simple matter. Dying would mean he couldn't continue pursuing his goal. So, he wouldn't die until his wish was fulfilled. However, having said that, abnormal individuals weren't that easy to come by. In the previous attempts, apart from a pseudo-servant, the rest were just thugs. Moreover, the person to be tested wasn't just Kurakawa Kazuya. There was also Shiki Ryugi. This girl wasn't without combat capability. No, quite the opposite. As someone connected to the root, how could she lack combat capability? At most, it was a question of whether she had awakened or knew how to use it. But, the weapons were there, and even if she couldn't use them, her sharpness couldn't be denied. To complete all these tests, a few more chess pieces were needed. But he wasn't in a hurry. His life had already spanned several decades. Moreover, Bartholomew Lorelei's cooperation with the Mages Association successfully continued the ley line, and he had at least a dozen more years. As long as he accumulated strength little by little during this process, seeking opportunities. There would be that day. Animation, huh, I see. Takehiko Inoue, who learned this news through the editor, wasn't excited, didn't rejoice, and didn't feel troubled. All of this was expected. Slam dunk. This manga now held a special position in Jump, even to the point of being indispensable. No matter how popular other manga might be, the theme of Slam Dunk was different. The theme was different. The audience it attracted was different. JUMP's circulation had already surpassed 7 million copies, which meant that in this country with a population of approximately 100 million, every 14 people had one Jump. If there were disruptions or exchanges, the numbers might even increase. One thing, if one person in 10,000 did it, it was non-mainstream. If one person in 1,000 did it, it could be considered a trend. If one person in 100 did it, it was undoubtedly mainstream. If ONC person in 10 did it, then it was core. In this country, manga had long become the core of the core. After all, manga magazines weren't exclusive to Jump alone. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that 1 in 10 people read manga. Among these magazines, Slam Dunk played a significant role. His chief editor had told him several times, extend it a bit, draw a bit more, like Dragon Ball. If it could be like Kochikame, that would be even better. Such words. But Takehiko Inoue didn't think like that at all. He wanted to draw a perfect ending. Whenever he wanted to conclude, he'd conclude. At the most appropriate time, he'd give it the most perfect ending. That was what he desired. But, hopefully, the animation production company won't be too shabby. Takehiko Inoue sighed slightly in his heart, as he was just a manga artist and couldn't change anything. Thinking about it, he felt a bit envious of someone he saw at the annual meeting a few years ago, Kurokawa Kazuya. A few years ago, he was just a mangaka. But now, he had the qualifications to cooperate equally with Jump. The animation produced by the company he founded. Takehiko Inoue had also watched. It was truly perfect. This was the form a mangaka most wanted to see their work presented in. However, when he unintentionally heard about the money burned for the production of the animation he created, he could only smile bitterly. Not everyone could achieve such a thing. His only worry in his heart was whether his Slam Dunk could get the production of Jojo Animaton. Now, with the cooperation terms between Jump and Jojo, his editor had mentioned it once. Every quarter, Jojo Animation might choose one of JUMP's manga for animation. And so, his manga Slam Dunk was submitted this quarter. So, looking at his editor, Takehiko Inoue said, "Which animation company is going to produce my manga? It's so mysterious." Inoue-sensei, congratulations in advance. The editor, looking at Takehiko Inoue, smiled and said, "Animation, huh? Yeah, not just that, but the company that accepted the animation of Slam Dunk this time is Jojo Animation." Huh, what's this? Shoji Asami looked at the book in front of her in surprise. Setting collection. Iwamoto Yu smiled wryly. Sometimes, I really don't understand Kurokawa-sensei's thoughts. He says he doesn't want to draw Fate anymore, yet he prepares such a thick setting collection. So, I can draw manga related to Fate, but... That's right. You can add to the setting, but not subtract. And try to make it reasonable. Shoji Asami's mouth twitched slightly. 301, a new lottery. Mifune City. Early morning. Kazuya opened his eyes, looked at the wall beside him, straightened his body, and lay on the bed, rubbing his head. FSN is over. I didn't even realize it myself. Moreover, it's the end of FSN. Speaking of which, this manga has been serialized for several years. He doesn't want to draw anymore in the future. Let's see the situation and let others draw Fatch. No, in the Type Moon series, whether they can increase the summonable slots for his noble phantasms. If possible, let others handle it. If not, he'll have to continue drawing Type Moon himself. After all, summoning heroic spirits in the Type Moon world saves a lot of command spells. He poured a cup of hot water and took a few sips. This is not the first lottery, and the excitement in his heart has gradually faded with each passing time. I wonder what I can draw this time. As always, starting with abilities. In front of the roulette, 10 squares appeared. Transparency, B+, magic resistance, 8 divinity, 8 item construction, 8 mystic eyes of petrification, 8 plus protection from arrows, B presence concealment, 8 magic, C projection magecraft, A plus jewel. Well, these are all good. Looking at these 10 abilities on the panel, Kazuya had a bit of expectation. The coolest among them is probably projection, right? Shouting, trace on, during his Chunabu days. The worst is probably divinity. Although divinity seems to add something, probably. There are quite a few people with divinity special attacks. Well, let's start. Rather than daydreaming, it's better to wait until something is actually drawn before saying anything. The roulette started spinning. With Kazuya shouting to stop, there was a sudden break. The pointer pointed to one of the abilities. Magic resistance. A. Magic resistance, which nullifies magecraft. Regardless of how powerful the magecraft is, magecraft below a rank will be nullified. Invincible in one step. Kazuya raised an eyebrow slightly, smiling satisfied. In this world, what is the strongest under normal circumstances? The answer is simple: whether it's the strongest person or the strongest force, it's magus. The strongest should be a magus, and the unquestionably strongest force is also the Mages Association. Even if the loss of elites in Cairo is considerable, it cannot be avoided. After all, the losses of the Holy Church are not less than those of the Mages Association. If Bartholomew Lorelei dies, the Holy Church can still say it is a great victory. But it's not the case. Bartholomew Lorelei is alive and well. And with A-rank magic resistance, it means that the influence of magus on him is almost reduced to 0. There is no need for mystic eyes killers and the like. Unless it's rainbow-level mystic eyes, there are very few mystic eyes in this world that can affect him, and even fewer that can break his A-rank magic resistance. Even if there is mystic eyes killers, it's not of much use. And aside from magecraft, there are probably not many magus in this world who can fight him physically. Combined with powerful ripple, he can even face weaker third-rate servants head-on. The threat from magus has almost disappeared, and conversely, dealing with the Holy Church is relatively difficult. Overall, in an instant, in a great mood. However, this is a passive ability that can't be used unless someone uses magecraft on me. Well, let's extract it first. No hurry to draw the manga. He took out this ability from the storage space. It was a transparent ball made of light. After taking it out, it slowly dissipated and merged into Kazuya's body. So it's acquired. This A-rank magic resistance is in hand. Next is the manga. Magical Girl, Lyrical Nanoa, Naruto, Devil May Cry, Attack on Titan, One Punch Man, Death Note, Hunter x Hunter, Fullmetal Alchemist, Dragon Ball, Hell Girl. Kazuya looked at the manga that replaced Hellsing position and his mouth twitched slightly. What is this? Dragon Ball. Didn't Akira Toriyama already finish serializing it in Jump? In a few more years, this thing will have ended, and at this time, they gave him Dragon Ball. Is this system joking? Or, is this system completely random? Kazuya pondered for a moment. Regardless of whether this manga exists in this world, whether it has been serialized or not, and regardless of its progress, it just adds it to the list. Thinking of this, Kazuya sighed slightly, holding his slightly sore head. Well, forget it. I don't have the qualifications to complain. Let's draw the lottery. As long as it's not Dragon Ball, anything is fine. That thing is completely unnecessary. The roulette kept spinning. Finally, under Kazuya's command, it stopped. Fullmetal Alchemist. Kazuya looked at the dimming roulette and the additional knowledge of Fullmetal Alchemist, feeling somewhat satisfied. Fullmetal Alchemist, serialized by Hiromu Arakawa in 2001, can be said to be a shining star in the manga world that cannot be overshadowed. This manga, consisting of a total of 108 chapters, has no redundant parts. The entire plot is a circle. Starting with the first chapter, returning to the origin in the last chapter, connecting all the circles perfectly. After reading the whole thing, tension, emotion, joy, surprise. Various emotions surged in his heart. Especially with the excellent production by the Bones Studio, this already very good-looking manga got even closer to perfection. Although some original scenes were added, it didn't make the manga worse at all. On the contrary, it became even more enjoyable. In the entire animation industry, such effects are rare. Of course, it's not perfect. After all, if you want to find faults, you can find them. Everyone's taste is different, and there is no perfect thing in this world. However, if compared with other animations, undoubtedly, it is perfect. To be able to get this manga so early surprised him a bit, but, a complete plot, a complete circle. It shouldn't be outdated in any CRA, right? The spirit of humanity displayed in it is also worthy of praise. Well, I don't have much work on hand. 108 chapters, not long, it won't take long to finish drawing. 302 The Ryugi Family's Probe. Sorting out his thoughts, Kazuya prepared to draw a bit first and then send it to Jump for serialization. However, he hesitated a bit. The current publishing environment at Jump is getting worse. Especially for new mangaka. Not only are there numerous masterpieces, but he himself is already serializing 2 works, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and Bleach. If he adds another one, that would be 3 simultaneously. Moreover, the positions on Jump are limited. The storage capacity for new mangaka is poor, and now there are suddenly 3. Even Kazuya felt a bit embarrassed. However, it was just a slight embarrassment, and he still planned to continue serialization on Jump, without intending to change that. After finishing washing up, Kazuya changed into new clothes. Instead of hurrying to the company, he planned to visit the Ryugi family, but it's raining. Opening the window, the drizzling rain gave a refreshing feeling. Let's drive there. When Shiki opened her eyes, it was still early in the morning. No one came to call her for breakfast, allowing her to enjoy this rare tranquility a bit. The room is almost empty, just a bed, a cabinet, and a chair. Nothing else. However, she likes this clean and simple room. Although, there are still some unnecessary items in this kind of room. A device that plays music called a Walkman, and 2 dolls, one is a rabbit, and the other is a cat. The person who gave them to her occasionally says he's like a rabbit, and sometimes says he's like a cat. It's really incomprehensible, how is she similar to these harmless things? Yes, these are all harmless, at least compared to herself. Even if she were to compare, she should be likened to things that are more dangerous and have more danger. After all, she is a killer. A murderer. Although, for some reason, she always can't go through with it. Every time, at a critical moment, she always stops. Her body naturally stops, no matter who she faces. Shiki-sama, breakfast is ready. I know, Akataka. Answering the person who broke this tranquility behind the door, she indeed can't continue like this. It's already this time. However, even so, she doesn't leave. She walked to the window, opened it. It's raining. Saying this, her body slightly stiffened, looking at a familiar thing, or rather, a familiar car. That is. Closing the window. Changing into new clothes, as if wanting to confirm something, her pace was slightly faster than when she went to eat breakfast. She walked to the place where she usually has breakfast. There, 2 people were already sitting. Good morning, Shiki. I came to see you. The man said something that was a bit annoying. It must be because her father is nearby and he knows she won't explode. She's not happy. She's not happy. Probably not. She herself doesn't quite understand what emotions she has now. Anyway, it feels good. How do you view Shiki? Shiki's father, the current head of the Ryugi family, looked at the young man in front of him. Last time, the internal matters of the Ryugi family had already been discussed. Including him, everyone didn't care about Kazuya's age. This might be something that needs calculation and consideration for an ordinary family. However, for a family like the Ryugi family, it's completely unnecessary. In reality, no matter what kind of man Shiki marries in the future, it doesn't matter to the Ryugi family because those things are not important. The only thing needed for the continuation of the Ryugi family is Shiki and the children she will have in the future. These are indispensable elements. As for other third elements, it doesn't matter at all. Although, from the perspective of the Ryugi family head, these things are not difficult at all. After all, the Ryugi family doesn't need to worry about whether there will be people willing or not. However, if possible, as a father, he still wants to consider Shiki's happiness. If this man, Kurokawa Kazuya, is just a friend who will only stay with Shiki for a few months or even 1 or 2 years, he won't have such thoughts. But, it's been 8 or 9 years. In a bit, it will be close to 10 years. In such a long time, Whether it's Shiki or Kurakawa Kazuya, their feelings haven't changed. There hasn't been any disgust or fear of each other. For a decade, it should be enough to discern a person's character, temperament, and other aspects. In his view, no matter from which perspective, Kurakawa Kazuya is very suitable, but he's too suitable. If he has no money, it's fine. If he has no fame, it's fine. The Ryugi family doesn't lack these things, and they don't have great ambitions, just maintaining the continuation of the family is enough. Of course, no one will give up the possibility of going further. However, precisely because Kurakawa Kazuya's conditions are too outstanding, can he accept the redundancy? If it were an ordinary person, it wouldn't matter, but Kurakawa Kazuya is not an ordinary person. The energy behind him is not weak. Letting such a person become redundant. Too difficult. However, Shiki is absolutely impossible to marry. Unless the Ryugi family is completely destroyed, there is no possibility. So, he plans to make a little test, ask the young man in front of him about his views on Shiki. Shiki. Kurakawa Kazuya smiled. She's cute. Well, the type that becomes cuter as she grows older. Is that so? The head of the Ryugi family remained silent for a moment, and this couldn't be considered useful information. Then, "Good morning, Shiki. I came to see you." After Kurakawa Kazuya finished speaking, he looked at the head of the Ryugi family with some confusion. "What's wrong?" "No." The head of the Ryugi family shook his head. "Let's talk about it when we have time later." 303 A new stand. "Kurakawa, can you go and drop Shiki off?" After finishing breakfast, the head of the Tsugi family spoke to Kazuya. "You came by car, right? It's raining outside, so why don't you drop Shiki off today?" "Yeah, sure." Kazuya nodded and slowly stood up. "Great, I was planning to do that." "Shiki, is there anything else to tidy up?" "No, nothing." Shiki shook her head. "It's fine like this." Watching the two leaving, the head of the Ryugi family sighed slightly. "Forget it, there's no need to rush. There's plenty of time. We can talk about it next time." "Still haven't decided. Any place you want to go?" Looking at Shiki sitting beside him, Kazuya closed the car door and asked. "Well, I don't know why, but I don't have any particular plans." "Is that so? How about a parallel world?" "Interested." "Huh, a parallel world." Shiki blinked slightly. "Is it really possible? I mean, can we do that?" "Yeah, we can. It's possible," Kazuya nodded, "but there are some risks. For example, you can't touch your counterpart in the parallel world, not even the clothes. For instance, if you touch the same piece of clothing in the parallel world as the one you're wearing now, it will vanish. Even your body will suffer significant damage. If the same person touches each other, the result is complete annihilation." Kazuya chuckled. "But aside from these risks, it's safe. We can go to the parallel world, change into the clothes of that world immediately, and as long as we don't touch our counterparts, it's safe. In other words, try to avoid going to the parallel world where another version of you resides." "Is that so?" Shiki smiled lightly. If that's the case, I'm getting interested. What about you? Do you have a way to go to the parallel world? When can we go?" "I don't know." Kazuya started the car, speaking while driving steadily. "It's just a possibility, we're not quite there yet for interdimensional travel. Maybe another month or a year, or perhaps 2 years. Anyway, it won't be long before I get this ability." You could have mentioned this when it's more certain. You got my hopes up for nothing." "Haha, there's nothing we can do. Traveling to a parallel world is not that simple. Just having the possibility is already great." "Is that so? Well, remember to take me along when the time comes." As they spoke, the car suddenly braked sharply. "No, it's nothing. It seems like a few troublemakers looking for trouble." Watching the individuals blocking the road and the others gathering around, Shiki furrowed her brows slightly. Akataka didn't educate them properly. "Well, let it go. We don't need to pay attention to these small troubles." Kazuya smiled, rolling down the car window. "Hee, hey, you look pretty wealthy. How about giving us some money?" "Move aside, don't block the way." "Get out of the way," Kazuya said, and everyone, including the person in front of him, awkwardly moved aside and walked to the side. The road in front cleared up, and Kazuya, with Shiki by his side, restarted the engine, saying, "See, these people don't need attention. They're very obedient." His mood was good. He had taken A-level magic resistance in the morning. Just now, his mystic eyes and suggestive magecraft were used quite effectively. Using his mystic eyes to disperse everyone, then using suggestive magecraft to make them forget today's events. Although he wore invisible glasses to hide his slightly different colored eyes, this thing was not a mystic eye killer. Although it still slightly reduced the effectiveness of the mystic eyes, it was not worth mentioning compared to the current level of his magic eyes. Feeling good. Just don't know if these people are mentally disabled or something, they dare to charge directly. However, there are so many mentally disabled people in this world, he can't go asking each of them the reasons for their mental disabilities. Just let it go. Watching the departing car. Not far away, Araya Soren was calculating, I see, so the eye's ability is probably compulsive, and at the same time, it used suggestive magecraft. Not bad. Without a doubt, the manipulation of those troublemakers was orchestrated by Araya Soren. To accurately calculate the combat power of Kurokawa Kazuya, he had already begun to gather information bit by bit. However, it was just collecting information. Most of his preparations were for dealing with and avoiding suppression. As for other details, he didn't intend to pay much attention. In other words, as long as Kurokawa Kazuya doesn't block the way, he won't go looking for trouble himself. However, if that guy has too much free time, even Araya Soren would have to take action. In this case, it's almost the limit. If I really want to test his true strength, these ordinary people are far from enough. What I truly need are extraordinary individuals. Saying that, he slowly walked back. The surrounding space seemed to engulf him like a body of water. Guide that person a bit, let him take action. Ah, what's this? Said a few people who had been let go by Kazuya, feeling somewhat puzzled. They couldn't recall why they came here or what brought them to this place. Is this Mifune City? Yeah, I remember the local Yakuza should be the Ryugi family, right? Let's go a bit further from here. This strange feeling. After dropping Shiki off at school, Kazuya, sitting in the car, touched his chest with some surprise. His heart was beating at a strange speed. Something was about to awaken. He felt the pull of someone in another parallel world, his sister in parallel world. Something was about to manifest from his body. Without a doubt. It was the seed planted by his own ability, reality override, used earlier. Stands are influenced by various forces, and now, he felt the pull. He could sense it. In a bizarre turn of events, his sister, Kurokawa Kazumi, awakened a stand ability. Consequently, his stand ability also woke up. Kazuya didn't go to the company, instead, he quickly returned home. The next moment, the door and the walls compressed. He arrived in a parallel world. 304 Sisters Stand. Huh, what's this? Ah, I'm in another world. Kazuya was a bit bewildered. Just following the awakening of his stand ability, D4C, he decided to try the feeling. And then, he ended up in another world. No sensation. It was as simple as walking through a door in a room, just passing through. His intuition, no, his stand told him that this was another world. No, the first thing to confirm is whether we can go back. Thinking of this issue, he broke into a cold sweat. Too fast. He had no preparation, it would be disastrous if he couldn't return. In that world, there were too many things he couldn't give up. So, first, try if it's possible to go back. Stand, D4C. It could be said to be a quite powerful stand. Apart from the ability to travel through parallel worlds, its attributes were also outstanding. Looking at this familiar environment, Kazuya let out a slight sigh of relief. I made it. But there's still something to confirm, and that is the version of my current D4C. D4C had two versions, one was the original version, and the other was an evolved version after obtaining the approval of the Saint's Corpse. But both were capable of traveling through parallel worlds, with the second version being slightly stronger, having undergone some evolution based on the original. However, Kazuya's current version of D4C was the original one. Nevertheless, it was sufficient. Traveling through parallel worlds was all he needed. As for D4C's attributes, the first version of D4C is like Star Platinum. Destructive power, speed, durability, precision, and growth were all rated as A. The range was rated as C. Of course, even so, it didn't mean he could go up against Star Platinum in close combat. After all, Star Platinum's A rating was due to the panel's upper limit being only A. Stands didn't have attributes like A+ or X. The upper limit was A. Well, I'm quite familiar with it now. But there's one more thing to do. The reasons for stand awakenings were various, among them, awakening suddenly, even earlier than himself. He hadn't thought about it before. But now that he had calmed down a bit, carefully thinking about it, he thought of a possibility: his sister, Kurakawa Kazumi, was in danger. The outbreak of spiritual energy in danger brought forth the possibility of awakening her stand. If that was the case, he had to check it out. The world in front of him seemed to turn into pages of a book. Each page was a different world. In 3 of them, he sensed familiar auras. One was the world where he currently existed. He could feel that he could leave from here and come back whenever he wanted. The second world was the one he accidentally went to when experimenting with his stand ability D4C. These 2 worlds were revealed before him. Now, the current world showed him the most. Although the world he had inadvertently visited also had a familiar aura, it was very weak. Lastly, he could sense, in one of the worlds, the presence of a familiar person. That must be his sister, Kurakawa Kazumi, right? D4C had many ways to be used, but there was one premise, and that was to fold. Anything was think. Even a falling drop of water and the ground counted as folding. In other words, rainy days. He could traverse parallel worlds anytime, anywhere. A sheet of paper was thrown up, covering Kazuya's head. When this sheet of paper slowly fell to the ground, there was nothing left in the original location. Kazuya, once again, traversed through parallel worlds, heading towards the world where the familiar aura was. Phew, wiping away the blood on his forehead. Kazumi leaned against the wall, trying to slow down her breathing. Breathe. First, calm down your breathing. She didn't have the spare energy to think about other things right now. She had to quickly restore her breathing, using ripple breathing, generating ripples of energy so she could survive. Bang! The entire ceiling collapsed. A man descended from the ceiling, looking at Kazumi, who rolled to the side, and smiled mockingly. "Found you, little mouse." Kazumi didn't say anything, just turned and ran. But just a few seconds later, she was caught up by that man. His arm pierced through her chest. "Stop running like this all the time, little mouse." Crack, crack, crack. The next moment, the man's face changed. The person in front of him suddenly exploded. Mercury carried a golden glow along his arm, trying to directly destroy his brain. "What is this? You fell for it again." Taking advantage of his distraction, Kazumi directly kicked him away and then turned and ran. She didn't believe this move could take down that dead apostle. The previous move was a technique that only she in the entire Magic Association could use, developed by her sensei Elmeloi II. It used illusion magecraft combined with a small amount of mercury to create a puppet with illusion magecraft. But in this case, even an ordinary magus could tell it was fake. The key was ripple. Ripple was the manifestation of life energy. Compared to magic, it felt closer to ripple and was incapable of various offensive uses. Still, it had more confusing properties. Mercury was liquid, capable of perfectly conducting ripple, making it look like a real person. And relying on the small amount of volume in hydrargyrum, it could even make that existence move and had more confusing properties. "You damn little mouse." The dead apostle stood up, cutting off his own arm, or else the mercury would destroy his heart and brain through the blood vessels in his arm. At that time, he would truly lose. "All right, let me teach you what a dead apostle really is." Kazumi's breathing was rapid, but it was still ripple breathing. She didn't need to defeat the opponent, she just needed to buy time. Now, someone had come to rescue her. Her senior, a brand-rank magus Svinglash. He should be here in a few minutes. But, could she hold on for those few minutes? "You damn." Again, Kazumi's face turned ugly. "When will this end? You annoying shit." In an instant, she felt like something had changed. Was it the world? Or something else? In any case, a pink figure appeared from behind her, just like a spiritual figure. 305 Plunderer Stand. This is. In an instant, something changed. The figure behind Kazumi felt different, and the silhouette behind her floated to her front. Facing the approaching stand, accompanied by her will, she swung a punch fiercely. Bang! In an instant, she saw the dead apostle's head explode like a watermelon. "What is this? What's going on?" She felt like she could control the figure that appeared behind her. With her will, the pink figure slowly merged into her body and disappeared. Could this be a stand? Suddenly, she had this thought. Since she already had Ripple, having a stand wouldn't be strange, right? If that's the case, Kazumi took a deep breath. With her will, the pink figure appeared and punched in front of her. It's a stand. Kazumi was pleasantly surprised. She didn't expect this situation to unfold. However, she wondered about the abilities of her stand. Looking around, she found a random place to hide and began experimenting with her stand's abilities. Strength, speed, precision, all were excellent. However, the stand couldn't move more than 5 meters away from her, meaning its range was around C or D. Everything else seemed to be at an A level. The final point was the stand's ability. Each stand had unique abilities, similar to superpowers. Time stop, object restoration, death experience, string manipulation, rotation, and many more. What Kazumi cared about most was what would her stand's ability be. Oh, finally found it. With this voice, a familiar one, a voice ran over, finally found you. What a strong bloody aura. I heard you encountered a dead apostle. Where is it? Where? Ah, it's already dead. Kazumi looked at the energetic senior with a twitching mouth. It's precisely because of this that Gray must find this person annoying. Even though she's already this old, she acts like a child. Huh, already dead. Sven Glaciate couldn't believe it. How did you do it? Well, so amazing. I remember your mage cracked is pretty average, right? How did you do it? Sven exclaimed. He didn't expect his junior to become so strong, capable of fighting a stand alone. Just like that, and it's done. Kazumi waved her fist, a bit puzzled as she shook her hand. Something's strange, though. Was her strength a bit too much? What happened to her? Her experience was relatively simple. She bumped into a dead apostle while out playing, went for the ritual sacrifice, and charged at the dead apostle. When she found she couldn't win, she ran away and sent a distress signal. She was originally in London, the headquarters of the clock tower. Reinforcements were arriving soon. However, she didn't expect to defeat a dead apostle all by herself. Back in her room, Kazumi clenched her fists. When she breathed, she felt her ripple had become stronger. Not an illusion, right? Could it be the ability of my stand? Plunder. This was Kazumi's stand ability. By killing an enemy, she could plunder a part of the deceased's little life energy. The enhanced strength was only due to the stronger stand after the life energy became stronger. Moreover, because of this, she could even see the situation of everyone's life energy. Not only that, but she could also split her life energy to heal herself or others. In Age of Gods, Magus used the ambient ley line. Now, with the depletion of the ley line, magecraft's decline, and humans could only use their own energy. The availability of the ley line had decreased countless times. Ripple was the energy of breathing. Life energy's manifestation. Then, the ley line was the breath of the planet. If the ley line disappeared completely, it would be equivalent to the death of the planet. The death of the planet. However, that wasn't entirely the case. It just temporarily stopped breathing, like when humans held their breath. It was just that this time period was a bit long. When a person's life energy was cut off, it was equivalent to losing their life, dying. By giving a part of her life energy to another life, like a dying butterfly, it would recover and flutter again. A pretty nice ability. Lying on the bed, Kazumi's stand brought her a drink and dinner. Feeling the leisure of this moment, she lazily said, by the way, it can also be used to deal with illusions. Illusions should have no life energy, right? Tomorrow, I'll discuss it with Professor El Meloy. Saying that, she suddenly stood up, feeling some movement in the cabinet next to her. The next moment, the cabinet door opened. A hand reached out from inside. What is this? Kazumi's face turned pale, a bit startled. Who could tell her when someone hid in her cabinet? Whatever. Let's beat them half to death first. The stand behind her suddenly appeared and punched the cabinet. Bang! The collision of fists. The collision of stands. What is this? Another stand user. Kazumi exclaimed in surprise. She didn't expect that shortly after awakening as a stand user, she would encounter other stand users besides herself. Look at you, so lively, and I'm relieved. A completely extended arm, the person behind the cabinet came out completely. This person's volume was something her small wardrobe couldn't contain. Even if the wardrobe size was doubled, it still couldn't fit this tall person. But actually, he did just come out from that cabinet. An illusion. Kazumi couldn't believe she was looking at the person in front of her. No, this is real. The man, Kazuya, took back his stand, D4C. I also awakened a stand ability, one that can travel through the parallel world. So, I came to see my lovely sister. Saying that, Kazumi looked at the stand beside Kazuya and said, such a strong power. Is this your stand? Yes. After confirming several times that the person in front of her wasn't an illusion, Kazumi's eyes were a bit moist. The intense life energy, even stronger than her, should not be fake. In other words, it's true. Her brother did awaken the stand's ability to travel through dimensions and came here. 306 Crossing the world in peace. Kazuya looked around and found something strange. It didn't seem like Kazumi was injured at all, and she had just awakened her stand a few hours ago. Or could it be that she awakened her stand without encountering any danger? If that's the case, that's impressive. How long has your stand been awakened? Kazuya suddenly asked his sister. Kazumi poured a cup of tea and said, It should be about 3 or 4 days. Indeed, the time was completely different. There was a significant difference in the timelines. How's life over here? Have you encountered any dangers? Dangers? Kazumi thought for a moment. Well, there were some, but I handled them. Nothing too serious. Now that my stand has awakened, I'm invincible. The girl said, putting her hand on her recently developed chest, looking proud. Is that so? Kazuya thought for a moment. Well, things have calmed down on my end too. Now that you have your own power, how about coming back? Kazumi fell silent for a moment and looked at Kazuya's expression, tentatively saying, let me ask, what's the current year on your end? Well, it's 1992. Kazumi fell silent. She really don't want to go back. 1992. Over here, it's already 20,121. The difference is huge, whether in terms of technology, convenience, or entertainment. Just over 20 years have passed, and she has completely succumbed to modern equipment. Well, Oni-chan, why not stay in this world and not go back? Hey, Kazuya seemed to understand something inside slightly. Well, forget it. I can't stay here for a long time. However, my stand makes things convenient. Crossing parallel worlds is as simple as stepping through a door. We can meet anytime in the future. Really? Yes, really. Kazuya nodded and suddenly seemed to remember something. Do you want me to bring your cat over for you? Kohana. Kazumi's eyes lit up. But Kohana should have grown a lot by now, considering it's been so many years. Well, I feel like nothing has changed. Yeah, that's right. After all, Oni-chan and Kohana have always been together, so it's natural that there hasn't been much change. Kazuya couldn't think of what to say for a moment. He is often with that cat. To be honest, he's too lazy to keep a pet, he even found it annoying and gave it away. But, well, let's consider it a one-time thing. By the way, Kazuya looked at the room and frowned slightly. Do you need money? Yes. Kazumi nodded quickly. I need money. There's no need to be polite, after all, it's her brother. What's wrong with asking for some money? Well, Kazuya nodded. In that case, direct cash might be a bit troublesome. I'll bring you some gold and jewel, don't mention it. Suddenly, he thought that if he used his ability, identical things might annihilate each other. Although he didn't know if the rules of Jojo world would still be effective in this world, it's better to be cautious. Give me your pocket money, and I'll invest in stocks for you. Kazumi blinked, not quite understanding. Don't worry, you'll understand later. I see, the time here is 2004. After settling the situation with Kazumi, Kazuya decided to explore the parallel world in front of him during the time before school ended. After some thought, he took a taxi using the money he found on the ground and arrived in a city, Fuyuki City. In many worlds, this place serves as a starting point. During the 3rd, 4th, or 5th Holy Grail War, changes occurred, creating various parallel worlds. The current parallel world should be no exception. Since it's Fuyuki City, there should be some clues. This world is following what clues? In the Nasuverse, whether it's Fate 0, Fate Stay Night, Fate Apocrypha, Fate Grand Order, etc. Each parallel world's Fuyuki City has differences. By coming to Fuyuki City, you can get a rough idea of what happened in that world and what will happen later. And now it's 2004, the Fifth Holy Grail War of some worlds happened around this time. Of course, the world Kazuya are in is different, it's a bit earlier. The Fourth Holy Grail War ended with the Fuyuki Great Fire, so it's Fate Stay Night. The Third Holy Grail War ended, and the Greater Grail was taken away, that should be Fate Apocrypha. Fate Khaled Liner Prisma Ilia. This involves two parallel worlds. If nothing happened in Fuyuki City or if something happened but was hidden, it might be the world of Ilia. If there's a big hole in the center of Fuyuki City, that's the world of Ilia. If Fuyuki City only had one Holy Grail War, it's Fate Grand Order. In any case, Fuyuki City seems to be the center of the world. Thinking he's got some skills, he came here to confirm the world line, just for fun. And Kazuya are confident. Avalon guarantees that he can be resurrected 11 more times. D4C guarantees that no matter what danger he encounters, he can quickly escape by crossing parallel worlds. His magic resistance means most magic won't affect him. What's there to fear? Just confront it directly, and it's almost certain that he won't get hurt. All right, stop here. Looking at the familiar place, Kazuya let the driver stop, got out of the car, and looked around before letting out a sigh. So, let's investigate the current situation in Fuyuki City. The next moment, he slightly corrected his expression and saw a familiar figure in casual clothes walking towards him. Who are you? The blonde man looked at Kazuya and said, I don't seem to know you, but this king feels an inexplicable familiarity. Kazuya was also a little stunned. Unexpectedly, they encountered this person here. This king of heroes, Gilgamesh. However, since he is dressed like this and, according to the investigation, it's 2004, in other words, this world is from a certain timeline in Fate Stay Night, right? 307 FSN World Line. The King of Heroes, Gilgamesh. This was their third encounter. The first time was when Kazuya summoned him with the command spells. The second time was during the previous Holy Grail War, where he was an adversary. And now, the third time has come. Well, this is unexpected, Kazuya smiled. I didn't think we would meet again here, King of Heroes, Gilgamesh. Oh, do we know each other? Gilgamesh said with interest. Nearly 10 years had passed since the last Holy Grail War. Unexpectedly, interesting things were still happening on the verge of this Holy Grail War. Gilgamesh lifted his head joyfully and looked at Kazuya. Tell me, mongrel, if it's interesting, I'll spare your life. Kazuya didn't mind. After all, that was his personality. If one worried too much about such things, it could reduce their lifespan. It's nothing significant, I've just encountered similar situations in other worlds. Parallel world, huh, I see, that makes sense. Gilgamesh nodded. If he had just been summoned, he might have brought back some memories from Throne of Heroes. However, 10 years had already passed. During these 10 years, he had no idea what his other self had been doing. It doesn't seem like magecraft or anything. What, traversing parallel worlds has become that simple? Well, you could simply understand it as me having acquired some special ability. HMPH. I see. Gilgamesh nodded. Even with humans constantly advancing, reaching this level would still take a few hundred years. But, you seem to know about my existence from the moment you arrived and even about the Holy Grail War, right? Coming here, is it for the Holy Grail in this place? If so, you are my enemy. I understand. Although he said that, Gilgamesh showed no intention of attacking. He smirked and said, I've said before, as long as you amuse me, I'll spare your life. This time, I'll let you go, but it won't be so simple next time. Watching Gilgamesh leave calmly, Kazuya was slightly surprised. Not interested in parallel worlds, huh? Right, the Throne of Heroes is, after all, an independent existence. For Gilgamesh, non-stop parallel worlds must be boring by now. Unexpectedly, upon arriving here, he had already judged the world line. However, Fate Stay Night still had many world lines. When it came to Saber and Tosaka Rin routes, it was Fink. But if it was the Heavens Feel route, even for him, it was a bit dangerous. By that, it wasn't referring to servants or Sakura or anything, but the black mud. If a human accidentally came into contact with that thing, who knows what would happen. However, these were still within manageable bounds. What bothered him the most wasn't these, but rather the everyday type of Fate/Stay Night world lines. For example, Carnival Phantasm, or Emiya Family's Dinner. Such things. Wanting to achieve a world line where everyone survives. The simplest way should be like this: Emiya Shuru takes on all 7, rubbing them against the ground. If they resist, he continues to fight, but doesn't kill anyone, just keeps rubbing. After defeating everyone, they happily disband the Holy Grail and use it as a magical source for all the servants. Everyone stays alive. Like that. It was a joke. Achieving this type of ending was really quite difficult. In that case, maybe I can play around a bit. For example, turning this world into that kind of world line. But thinking about it carefully, his power wasn't enough. Well, maybe I can ask Gilgamesh for help. Thinking so, he walked briskly towards the direction Gilgamesh had left earlier and soon saw Gilgamesh, who was taking a stroll. What's this? I graciously spared your life. Is there something else you're dissatisfied with? No, it's not that. I just wanted to ask, how much time is left until the Holy Grail War starts here? Kazuya spoke while walking over. You should know about this, right? After all, you've been here for 10 years. Want to participate in this Holy Grail War? Gilgamesh smiled. The person in front of him knew his true name and had apparently seen him more than once, so he should know his strength. However, even so, standing in front of him, he remained quite confident, as if he wasn't concerned at all about him taking action. Or rather, even if he did take action, he was confident he could escape. Being able to maintain such an attitude in front of the King of Heroes. That is, the Holy Grail was his possession. Anyone daring to snatch something from the king would meet a dire fate, wouldn't they? No, I'm not interested in that Holy Grail thing. Kazuya smiled and said, this kind of world, well, I want to achieve a different ending, so I wanted to know the specific date the Holy Grail War starts. It's not interesting to say it now. Still trying to be mysterious in front of me. Gilgamesh narrowed his eyes, emitting a dangerous aura from his pupils. However, after some thought, he didn't take action. Fine, I'll tell you. The Holy Grail War will start in about 4 months. If you don't amuse me by then, I'll kill you. Hurry up and summon your servant. In that case, there might still be a chance of survival, you mongrel. 4 months, huh? No, should I say a year? In that case, time is indeed a bit tight. Kazuya pondered slightly. In reality, he had just experienced the events of Fate/Stay Night in the dream world a few nights ago. These past few days, he had been experiencing it inside. However, dreams were still dreams, and there were limitations. It wasn't as free as the real world. In the dream world, the endings one could obtain were limited, unlike in reality. Coincidentally, he was planning to take Shiki with him to play in the parallel world. It wasn't good to just fight and kill all the time. If there was a peaceful daily world, he could bring her over to enjoy. I understand. Well then, see you later. Kazuya said and looked at the time. It had already been an hour since he came here. In his original world, 3 hours had passed. In a while, it would be time for school. Let's call it a day for today. We'll meet again if there's a chance. 308 in preparation. What a surprising man. Watching the place where Kazuya was originally standing, Gilgamesh walked slowly over, picked up the papers on the ground, and said, has the information completely disappeared? From this world. I see, so this is his method of traversing parallel worlds. Maybe it could bring some amusement to me, mongrel. Well, it seems 3 hours have passed. Kazuya checked the time and nodded in satisfaction. Time axes in different worlds were not the same, and even the flow of time varied. It gave a rather confusing feeling. The time flow here was 3 times faster than the previous one, and the world where his sister was disappeared quite a bit slower. 3 years had passed here, but only 2 years had passed there. D4C's ability was indeed amazing. Not only did it have formidable power, but its attributes were also not lacking. However, the power of his other stand was weakened. The stand ability that could discern truth from falsehood and draw out others' souls' autumn was weakened. A person could only possess one stand. This limitation remained even in this world. Currently, his situation was somewhat like Dio at the beginning. At first, Dio had 2 stands, the world and stand like a hermit purple. However, with further control over his body, the other stand gradually disappeared, and in contrast, the power of the world's ability became stronger. He was similar now. Stand D4C had two forms. He felt that if he gave up Autumn, he could completely master D4C's second ability. However, although D4C's second ability was not bad, allowing him to place himself in the light, or, in other words, between dimensions, redirecting attacks onto others and avoiding harm himself, appearing like a weakened version of Avalon relative to him, he still needed Autumn. The ability to see into hearts could be quite effective in many situations. Compared to his now almost surplus defensive power, it was more valuable. So, try to maintain the current situation as much as possible. Try to maintain a balance between the two stands. Thinking this, he made several punches in the air with Autumn. He felt the balance shift slightly. Whichever ability he used, that ability would become stronger. Until one day, absorbing the other stand ability completely would bring it to an end. This kind of thing should be avoided as much as possible. However, having two stands sometimes made him feel like he was being torn apart. But currently, it didn't feel too severe. If he obtained a third stand, this is good. Having abilities also means having limitations, giving a sense of reality. It's not right to just gain without any effort, or to give without any returns. The price will have to be paid sooner or later. Better to pay it in advance than postpone it. Otherwise, who knows what kind of interest and consequences will accumulate later on. There's no clear contract for that. Rubbing his head, which felt a bit sore from consecutive use of both abilities, Kazuya sighed deeply. The ripple effect continued to alleviate the pain. In a few minutes, he should fully recover. Shiki is about to finish school. I should pick her up. But, he hadn't checked on his company today at all. Shouldn't be a problem, he often didn't go anyway. However, suddenly, he felt a bit drowsy. This feeling, Merlin. Recalling this familiar sensation, Kazuya furrowed his brow slightly. After a moment of thought, he sighed and lay down to sleep. There was still an hour before Shiki finished school. He hoped to settle things during this time. This magus was not honest. What was he doing in Avalon? Well, as soon as he lay down, the world suddenly turned into a vast sea of stars. In that place, the magician Merlin appeared. Good morning, Kurakawa Kazuya. It's already afternoon. If there's something, say it quickly. I have to pick up Shiki. Sure, Merlin smiled gently. It's nothing major. I just wanted to ask, what are you planning to do? What do you mean? Merlin looked at Kazuya and said, as you know, Artoria of this world is now in my hands. However, her mental state is extremely unstable. If she wakes up now, it would be troublesome. So, I plan to arrange a suitable dream for her. You're good at this kind of thing, especially now, it seems you've gained the ability to traverse parallel worlds. In other parallel worlds, Artoria must have had a moment of redemption. Tell me how. That can be arranged. Well, I happen to be working on something similar recently. Once it's done, I'll give you a copy. Good, that's great. But, how do I do this? Are you in Avalon? Not the noble phantasm Avalon, but the actual Avalon that exists. Through dreams, of course. Merlin smiled and said, after all, I'm half human. It's something that can be done. So, I'll leave it to you. Alright, hurry up and wake me up. I have things to do. Sure, I understand. After that, Kazuya felt a bit dizzy, and when he regained consciousness, he was back in his original room. Everything felt like a dream. No, those were originally dreams. Checking the time, it was just past 3 in the afternoon, almost time for Shiki to finish school. Today has been quite eventful. Since he didn't have much time, he decided to drive over. As usual, a dull and boring day. A day of monotony. After packing up her textbooks, Shiki walked slowly toward the school gate. There were no friends walking with her, but she didn't mind. With her temperament, others might encounter some unpleasant situations, but she was Shiki Ryugi, not to mention the powerful Ryugi family behind her. She could easily make those who didn't know their place regret their actions. As for parents coming over, at that time, it would be handled by her family. But even so, it couldn't change one thing: she had no friends. Well, it was enough. Looking at the person waving to her at the school gate, Shiki felt a slight relief in her heart. Ah, yes, this is enough. How was today? The usual question, and the usual answer. Nothing special, just the same as always. Is that so? Kazuya nodded. By the way, I mentioned the parallel worlds to you today. What's the matter? Just now, I awakened to the ability to traverse parallel worlds. It's related to what I talked about earlier. 309, 1993. So fast. Shiki looked at Kazuya in surprise. Didn't you say it would take another month or even longer for the stand to awaken? After all, there are many factors that can affect the awakening of a stand. Even I can't determine the exact time. Although it's quite unexpected that it awakened today. Kazuya looked at the seated Shiki and said, so, how about it? I remember tomorrow is Friday, and the holidays start. How about taking a trip to another parallel world for some fun? Sure, sounds good, Shiki nodded. You decide. However, in exploring other worlds, there should be someone worth killing, right? No, there isn't. Give up on finding such a person in any world. You, always so bothersome at times like this. Shiki said with some dissatisfaction. Ha ha ha. What? A new project? Masayuki looked at the script handed over by Hideaki Anno with some confusion. Ah, yes, a new project. According to the president, it's about letting us unleash our creativity, casually come up with ideas and play around. Since the workload on Jojo has been a bit heavy lately, this is a way to refresh our minds. Masayuki raised an eyebrow. Doing animation to relax is impressive. Though he said that, he still glanced through the script, Carnival Phantasm. I see. Yeah, this could work. But, looking at Hideaki Anno who hadn't left yet, he said, will people really watch this? No, it's fine. Didn't I say? The main purpose is to relax, to create something that makes us laugh. Well, that makes sense. Just finish it as soon as possible. After that, we still have Code Hayes waiting for us to work on, and aren't you interested in that script? Masayuki nodded with a smile. Indeed, that one is quite interesting, something like a prince's revenge tale. Exactly, Hideaki Anno nodded. By the way, I heard that the president is getting some advanced equipment for anime production recently. What kind of equipment? I don't know, but it's something really cutting-edge. Hideaki Anno shook his head. It seems to have been obtained from the US military. Anime equipment from the military. Hideaki Anno thought for a moment and nodded. Although I don't really understand, the president wouldn't deceive us. Ah, Kazumi lay on the sofa, exuding the atmosphere of a lazy fish. The house had become larger, and they had bought a bunch of appliances. It's great to have money. Oni-chan, you're amazing. Being AA ranked Golden Rule makes these things simple, Kazuya replied. Then he looked towards the two expressionless individuals sitting nearby. In the room, there were a large number of devices, and there were also two professionals in this field. After all, they were 20 years ahead of the world he came from. Just to be safe, they decided to hire two relevant personnel and signed a contract for 2 years. One was responsible for teaching Hideaki Anno and the others how to use the equipment, and the other was responsible for teaching some people how to produce these devices. Of course, the contract included some Magecraft suggestions after signing, making them temporary slave to Kazuya to avoid any unnecessary trouble. However, didn't you say that if your alternative selves mech in another parallel world, they will die? Kazumi asked with some confusion. So why do you have to use my pocket money to invest in stocks instead of just giving me the money directly? It's okay. Afterward, I'll prohibit them from leaving my company in the future. This way, they won't encounter the alternative selves from that world. As for the equipment, it will be isolated, and we'll keep using it until we can make it locally with our own materials. This way, safety will be ensured to some extent. These things were bought in the US, which is tens of thousands of miles away from Japan. As long as luck isn't particularly bad, there should be no problem. Kazuya said, glancing at the time, it's about time. I'm leaving now. Since the flow of time on both sides is different, I won't come often if there's nothing urgent. This frequent jumping has already messed up my sense of time. Understood. Goodbye. Kazuya shook his head and began to send everything, including people, back to his own world. On the other side, the entertainment project, Carnival Phantasm, was finally completed. This included the manga adaptation of the 3 storylines of PSN prepared by Kurokawa Kazuya. Originally, they were planning to make it into a game directly, but considering the busy schedule on the company's side, it was not feasible to specially make a game for just one event. Code Geass also began production, and he had already watched the first episode, feeling quite satisfied. So they didn't plan to interrupt their progress. Here it comes again, a new original manuscript. Looking at the new manga manuscript handed over by Kurokawa Kazuya, Iwamoto Yu sighed slightly. They're really fast, but it looks like it's a medium-length one this time. After opening the package, Iwamoto Yu quickly found the title, Fullmetal Alchemist, A story about alchemy. Let's see. He poured a cup of coffee and began to read the manga. After all, it was Kurokawa Kazuya's manga, so he had some expectations. However, glancing at the calendar on the wall, Iwamoto Yu sighed slightly. Another year has come, Time had already passed 1992 and entered 1993. In 1992, a series of events occurred, and Jump reached its peak. Code Geass production had also reached halfway. Slam Dunk production had also begun. In addition, Fullmetal Alchemist's manga, and Fate's other two storylines were also completed. What remained was the serialization. Meanwhile, in the mystical world, the most significant event was the Holy Grail War that occurred in Cairo. Half of Cairo was blown away. Even now, anyone who saw it would marvel at it and be wary of the power of servants. However, the major disturbance of this incident had also come to an end. Both the Mages Association and the Holy Church suffered significant losses in terms of manpower, but because of this, they didn't have the energy to do anything else or even try to collect debts from each other. Time continued to pass steadily. Arriving in a new year. 310 World Destruction Crisis. It's New Year again. Kazuya looked at the sky and said, but, surprisingly, it's not snowing. Yeah, Shiki, who was beside him, also looked up. Without snow, there's no New Year atmosphere. Oh, here it comes. Kazuya was momentarily puzzled, and indeed, snowflakes began to fall from the sky. That's better. By the way, any New Year gifts? Shiki asked with a smile. At this time, you can't just not give anything, right? Yeah, prepared one. Kazuya smiled and took out a box that had been prepared beforehand. Here, New Year's gift. Alright, I'll open it without hesitation. How about waiting until we get home? Well, since it's your gift, I want to see what it is. Shiki lowered her head without looking at Kazuya, opened the box, and revealed the delicate dagger inside. A dagger. Shiki's eyes lit up. You finally decided to give me something like this. Yeah, Kazuya nodded. No matter what, we will face parallel worlds next. Although I will try my best to protect you, accidents may happen unexpectedly. So, you also need to be able to protect yourself. Shiki swung the dagger playfully a few times, then stabbed towards Kazuya, but as she got closer, she stopped. What's this? You, not even dodging. You won't really strike, after all, you've always been like this. Kazuya laughed and said, I commissioned a puppeteer named Tuko Aozuki to make that dagger. It has good ripple conductivity, and the blade has some characteristics that cannot be healed. Of course, it can release up to the level of a noble phantasm, so it can undo it. This way, it can prevent you from accidentally injuring yourself, right? There won't be such accidents. Shiki turned her head slightly, looking at the dagger in her hand, smiling, and put it away. But, I'm satisfied with this gift, and, thank you. Thank you. Shiki put away the dagger and changed the topic, saying, what about your sister? After all, it's New Year. No, she's still in 2012. It's still a few months until New Year, maybe when we celebrate the New Year in 1994, she'll reach 2013. Of course, I didn't bring her over. Kazuya held one of Shiki's hands, and the two of them walked forward slowly. Well, she has grown up after all. She left me for 2 years before. She has changed a lot. What's wrong? Shiki looked at Kazuya with confusion. Although you say that, your expression doesn't seem like that. Well, there's still a long time to worry about. It's just that I feel her world is a bit dangerous. Kazuya sighed and talked about the recent situation. A while ago, Kazumi participated in a test organized by an organization called Chaldea. Qualified as a master. At that moment, Kazuya knew how her world had changed. In the Holy Grail War in Fuyuki City, the Lord of the Clock Tower, Marisberry Animosphere, for the final victory of the Holy Grail War, used funds to establish Chaldea. Relying on the relationship with Kazumi and as a relative of the master, he also applied to visit Chaldea. However, it hasn't been approved yet, although it's been some time in this world. On the other hand, it has only been a few days in Kazumi's world. Even so, it is almost certain that her world is the world of Fate Grand Order. That's why it feels a bit annoying. She had already told her about the potential world destruction crisis in that world and wanted to take her away, but it failed. She simply didn't want to leave. She even replied, saying, "In that case, I can't leave even more. Since if this world is going to be destroyed, I'll just save this world." Tisk, she really has confidence in herself. It's all the same. I said you siblings are completely the same, aren't you afraid of death at all? Or rather, you don't even consider your own death. Shiki sighed slightly. Even though she said that, in the end, you also tacitly agreed and didn't forcibly bring her back or anything. Well, after all, world destruction crises are quite common, and her world still has several years. Putting it on our side gives us even more time, which is sufficient this time. Kazuya said with a slight smile. However, what he cared most about was not this. Fate Grand Order. The entity named Goetia burning human history is not the first time. Kazuya had experienced such a situation in several parallel worlds he crossed with D4C in search of opportunities. But he was still too weak now, although he could defend himself, participating in such a battlefield was still far beyond his reach. The turning point was in Solomon, and person named Lev. Lev committed suicide, and if he didn't, the burning of human history wouldn't happen. Lev didn't commit suicide, and then the burning of human history would activate. However, in all these worlds, defeating Goetia meant the end. No information about something called Lost Belt was obtained. So, he had a conjecture. Is there such a world where, regardless of whether Lev committed suicide or not, Goetia would still burn human history? Because, after that, the world would face an even greater crisis. He hoped that Kazumi's world wouldn't happen to hit this jackpot. In his view, celestial body that will come to his world in 2030 was more dangerous than the burning of human history. However, whether it was the burning of human history or the celestial body, both might be less dangerous than what appeared in FGO 2.0 before he crossed over. But when he crossed over, there was only a prologue about 2.0. The summoning system he drew from also had no information in this regard. So, it was completely unknown. However, as long as he was strong enough. The unknown also meant it was interesting. Well, that's probably the situation with the crisis. Kazuya revealed some of the things he knew. He didn't intend to hide too much from Shiki. Well, it sounds interesting, huh? Hey, how about counting me in when saving the world and such? If it's that kind of battle, there must be people worth killing, right? No, such people don't exist. Give up. Hey, you, this guy. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.